start with the cell phone, pick up right where we left off on the last meeting. If there's anyone in the crowd that would like my attention and have a say, just let me know.
Try that one over there.
There we go. We got two mics. We good to go now?
You can look like a third world dictator.
All right. We have
Red one's good. For some reason, the yellow one's not doing anything.
five members present, so quorum has been met. We can continue with this, and I'm going to move right into this since we have 17 policies to go over, and I'd love to catch back up from the last meeting, so we'll make this first one as quick as possible. This is on the cell phones. We do have a base policy that we came up with the last time. I think we were left with two options. One was our first paragraph, which is basically an interjection of our current policy on electronic devices. We interjected that there. We just need to verify that and make sure everybody's good with that, the way it reads. And then we will move right to the offenses and talk to the offenses. I will announce that we do have a special guest here today, Mr. Craig Northcott, our district attorney here in Coffee County. I think he issued an opinion that everybody has kind of read about the issues surrounding confiscations and seizures and things of that nature. And I'll let him, before we actually get into the offenses, I'll probably let him give a brief description of that. Then he might want to hear what we got to say, and then he can say if we're off track or how he feels or however he feels we need to do that.
Attorney Northcott, I'm not annoying you, I've got a signed purchase order, so I'll listen while you're talking. It's not that I want to hear what you got to say.
I'm used to being ignored.
So, moving right into this, is there do we have an extra copy of this policy that we have temporarily made here that we're starting with today? Maybe let Mr. Northcott have one just to kind of follow along as we're doing. He may want to make notes, see some things, and it might stick out to him a little more. Basically, what you're looking at there, Mr. Northcott, is you see strikes through an original policy that we kind of started with as a base, which was Warren County's policy they've been under here in the last couple of years. When you look down to the bottom of sheet one there, you see in blue, that is basically the current policy we've had in Coffee County Schools since 2011. That's what we came up. We did tackle that, the last, striking all this other language and stuff, and getting to this bottom part here. And it transposes over onto page 2 of 3, a little bit at the top, which is basically some law things that were included in the law that came down that we have to include into the policy with health and things of that nature and special ed. Then we kind of have our stuff down through there getting to the offenses, but we'll get to that in a minute. Right now, I'm just going to, we kind of shoot in the dark with this committee, especially with something like this, and I just kind of turn the floor over one at a time, and everybody kind of goes through, and if they've got anything with any issues between lines 27 and 4 of the second page, 27 through 32, and then flip the page over, and it's 1 through 4. Let's hash that out real quick, then we'll move right on into the offenses. If anybody's got anything they've had second guesses about.
You had said something about the first offense, that the student could pick it up, and in this, the first offense, the parent.
Are you in the paragraph on the first page?
Oh, she's on the fence.
Offenses?
No, I'm not on the offenses
Oh, I
yet.
thought you were on.
No, I was just asking if we had any issues with that first paragraph we interjected in the previous meeting.
And this is line 27 to,
27 to basically 32 in one word. That would be what our policy reads in that section, starts with. It flips over and carries on through. On page 2 to line 4 of page 2. And then everything else we left the same. through those other two. That's where we were at the last meeting. And if everyone's kind of good through there, that's where we just interjected that last meeting,
Okay.
and it carries to those little items there that covered what the state said we had to cover with IEPs and
Okay.
things of that nature. We're just kind of making sure we're good to the point of offenses, and then we'll hash these offenses out. I personally hadn't seen that. Okay. If everyone's good in that neighborhood, then we'll just move right on to offenses.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Parsley and Mr. Anderson, Dr. Anderson and Ms. Sellers and I talked this morning about the offenses and what needs to take place, and I think they're trying to work something. And I do feel like because of the difference in the nature of the students, Mr. Anderson, of course, has 6, 7, and 8. The other group is 9 through 12, which is our secondary people, and we kind of come to the conclusion that hopefully the Ms. Sellers and Mr. Parsley could come to some agreement on what they want to see on their first, second, and third offense. What Mr. Dr. Anderson is doing right now seems to be working for him, but the question was that we have Mr. Northcott here about being able to take the phones as such. So we've had that discussion this morning with the 3 principals, so let them
Yeah.
blend in what they come up with, if you don't mind.
Well, you all feel free to interject as we go. You know, we had talked this morning, and as Dr. Powell said, you know, Ms. Sellers and I have, you know, protocols that we have followed that have been very similar. They're all high school students. And Mr. Anderson's protocol at the middle school is somewhat different grade levels of students. Ms. Sellers and I had wondered if it might be appropriate to have some variance in the protocols, and really I'm talking about the consequences. Would it be appropriate to have some variance in the consequences administered between high school and middle school? You know, again, with Mr. Anderson's students, keeping those in lockers, there's a different setup really from the beginning there. As I look at what we have here in writing as a draft, we had talked this morning about whether it might even be necessary to do a warning once it's in the office, because the students will have been told, and that will be made clear by administration, by individual teachers. You know, but, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and Ms. Sellers and Mr. Anderson and I had talked, we really don't have an issue with administering a consequence with lunch detention the first time that the device is in the office. Now, beyond that, we had thought that it would be appropriate to do a day of in-school detention on a second offense in the office, and then from there, and we would hope we would not have anything beyond that, and there's a good chance we wouldn't, but you never know. We had hoped that beyond that, we might just do 3 days of ISD on a third, 5 days on a fourth, and again, these are, I mean, just referral after referral for the same behavior. Those were Ms. Sellers and I's thoughts. Do you have anything you want to add there, Ms. Sellers?
No, it's been working for both of us. You pulled some discipline data today, didn't you, Mr. Parsley?
I did, and we have had 50 some odd referrals for cell phone violations this school year. I would have to go back and pull it out, but it was in the 50s. We have had 7 second offenses this year, and I believe it was 3 third offenses. So, you know, I feel like, you know, we can do, you know, a few days of lunch detention. We could do a few days of lunch detention on a first offense in the office, followed by a day of in-school detention on a first offense. That's something that Ms. Sellers and I had been thinking about.
Well, that's what we've been practicing, and we have not had a problem with that. I had 50-something first offenses through the third quarter, and I've had 20 second offenses and 1 third offense so far. So I feel like what we're doing is being effective, and
And y'all's,
ours would be the same.
but y'all don't have any confiscation other than for the day.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And
We
I-
do
Okay,
not
no
keep them
overnight.
overnight.
No overnight.
And
overnight.
I'm sorry, I left that out, but we do
Okay.
not keep them overnight.
And I'd like to add in our conversation this morning, we talked about the fact that especially the senior high kids, a lot of those students, when they leave school, they go to workplaces, they have to make arrangements for various and sundry things, and they felt like that it wouldn't be to our best interest and their best interest to take those phones up for a night. Dr. Anderson's a little bit differently because he had kids that doesn't drive, so it would be you need to let him tell his situation
that's-
and go from there.
That's,
But right now, the high school and ninth grade academy, correct me if I'm wrong, would not like to deal with keeping the
Overnight.
phones overnight.
That's correct.
We would prefer not.
We would prefer not.
So we, excuse me, we do keep the phones overnight currently. Whenever they're taken up during the week, they're kept till Friday. And Friday is the day that we have them parents come and pick them up. And we designate between 3 and 3:30 as a pickup time. Now, if I have a parent that says, my child is an athlete, they need their phone in the afternoons, I have done something like this. I have said, okay, so your child can get that phone back each afternoon, but it must be brought to the office and kept in the office for the day, just so that that consequence is still there, right? And so anytime that I have a parent that, that has a hiccup with that, I work with them. I had a parent 2 weeks ago that said, I can't come on Friday. I work on Fridays. I work in the afternoons, evenings. I can't get there. Can I pick it up on Thursday? Sure.
what offense do you get to that level of anytime during the week, you take it till Friday? Number one?
Yep.
Or-
That's right off,
Okay.
right out the gate. That's what we've been practicing.
'Cause
and-
I know I'd like to, I like Ms. Jones's point the last meeting of trying to come up and devise a blanket coverage, which sounds like it may be hard to do that from elementary all the way through high school so that we have one policy that covers the system from the ground up. But
I definitely think we need a policy about the phones being kept, because I've had parents contact me and say that they understand the consequences for not doing what they're supposed to do with the phone at school.
Sure.
But a lot of them are home alone at night, until their parents get there, and their cell phone is at school. And they feel like that they need their phone in case of an emergency or, God forbid, a fire or something in the
Right.
house, because
Sure.
they're left without any type of communication. And I think that's an issue that we need to discuss, because with you keeping them all week, or even at night, that does keep that child from having access to their parents or to someone, to a grown-up. When they
Agreed.
get off the bus or
Yeah,
whatever.
and again, if I have parents that reach out to me, I work with parents, and let
I
them
think
know.
it needs to be one way or the other.
Well, I had,
Because
and
there-
it's interesting you said that. We had an email today, I had a parent reach out, and this is exactly what the parent said. I was listening to your May 5th meeting. I have a genuine concern about students being sent home without their cell phones. Most homes no longer have landline phones. By keeping that student's cell phone, you're taking away that student's only means of contacting emergency services. Imagine a fire, someone breaking into a home, or domestic violence situation. I fully support punishment, but I am against sending students out of the school with no way to contact emergency service. I also see where this could make the school liable, allowing this to occur. It is against the law to interfere with someone trying to contact 911. This is how I answered this person today. I basically told this person that that is definitely a concern. That is, we don't even want to think of that instance taking place. However, I don't think nobody in this room has mentioned, until I knew what I just asked you, a confiscation overnight past 2 offenses. I was under the understanding the first time the student got to get it at the end of the day. The second time, the parent had to come get it at the end of the day. Then the third time, there was an overnight confiscation. Well, in my eyes, once you've been through 2 opportunities to follow the rules, number 3, the parent was already made aware. The parent could have made made arrangements and made abilities for that child to have contact if they wasn't going to be there and the child was at home alone, because we're talking about offense number 3, not right off the bat. So third time's a charm. The parent's going to have to make some arrangements for the child to have a phone if we keep it overnight. And I'm not saying how long we keep it, but if they keep it overnight, looks to me like that shifts the liability from the school system kind of over to the parents if something were to happen after that third offense. Because I call it, and I look at it as contributory negligence. You correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Northcott, but if the parent's been told, the kid's been told, and then they end up on the third time, apparently he didn't learn his lesson, which should be up to that parent to make sure that child is safely left at home and has every opportunity to call 911 and avoid being stuck in a situation where they can't get any kind of help.
I'd understood, Mr. Northcott, if I may, that if we confiscated or kept a phone in the presence of the school setting, that if something were to happen to that phone, we would be liable for it. Is that correct or incorrect?
I can't give you legal advice civilly, but just generally speaking, yes. If you're in possession of any piece of property and there's damage that is due to your negligence or recklessness or intentional conduct, then you obviously are responsible for that damage to some degree. So there's ways to deal with that, such as waivers and that type of stuff that can address those concerns, but that would be a question for the school board attorney to come up with that.
Okay. So,
And from the criminal standpoint, there was an issue about interference with 911. I understand where the parent, the citizen's coming from on that. There is a crime for interfering with 911 calls. The context of that is different than what we're dealing with here. That's where you're in a domestic situation, say, and the abuser grabs the phone away from the victim to prevent them from calling 911. That's the context of that law, rather than just a general, you can't have your phone, son. That would not get you in trouble for if there was an emergency.
okay, that was good, because clarification of that would have been, is great. And just like in the, I think the only issue was between an actual confiscation, if you can, which I think your letter, I think everybody got his kind of statement of that and has read that. I'd like to give you a minute to kind of explain that.
Well, and I'll be happy to, and I'm interested in any questions or concerns that the email raised. I don't want to rehash what you've already read and understand too much, but essentially, the U.S. and Tennessee constitutions protect us from unreasonable searches and seizures. And so there's the society's definition of what is reasonable obviously varies depending on the context of the search or seizure. And the cases that I cite to, the leading cases from the U.S. Supreme Court and from the Tennessee Supreme Court, deal with searches, but inherent in a search is a seizure. I can't search your backpack without seizing it. So when you deal with search and seizure law, when you talk about one, you're talking about the other. So I want to make sure that that's clear. So give you an example. I've got a backpack walking down the street, and police just know who I am and don't like me and stop me, and I'm going to search your backpack. I would be protected against that. That would be an unreasonable search. Go to the airport and I want to get on a plane, police can search my backpack, and that is determined to be a reasonable search. So the context of where the search happens, where the seizure happens, is very important, and that's essentially what the cases hold, is that in a school setting, the expectation of privacy is much lower than in other settings within our society. And the Tennessee Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court says, rather than the probable cause standard, which is higher, it's just a reasonable basis standard for the search or seizure. Is it reasonable to maintain order within the school and maintain safety within the school to do a seizure of a cell phone? So your policy needs to be within that context. Certainly we know that all kinds of bad things can happen with kids using cell phones while at school. Obviously very disruptive to the classroom, disruptive to their ability to learn, to concentrate, all that kind of stuff. But also have bullying type things that can happen. You have, they don't think of it this way, but legally it's exchanging of child porn at an extreme, other kind of extreme level of what can happen, calling in bomb threats, different things like that that can happen with use of electronic devices. So it is certainly reasonable for the school system to be looking at ways to curtail that. And my evaluation of this would instructing students that they cannot access their phone with the exception of express permission from the teacher, emergency, health issue, the type of things that are listed in the OSS policy. I think this would be deemed to be a reasonable policy that could then, if violated, a seizure of the device would then also be determined to be reasonable to prevent that from happening. And then also the scope of the seizure, it becomes important. Is a reasonable duration of the seizure appropriate? And that's what y'all are discussing and debating right now, is how long should that seizure last? And I think y'all are wise to be debating how long you should maintain that, and certainly the number of offenses, the type of offense, and those type of things are appropriate considerations to determine how long to maintain control over that device. So just that as a general context is what I tried to explain in my email. Hopefully it was somewhat coherent, but I welcome y'all's input, questions, anything that I can help to do to help.
Do you have an opinion on a time frame that you think personally is a reasonable based off of offense?
Yeah, I certainly, through the end of the school day I don't see any issue with that. And that sounds like primarily what we're talking about. You violate the policy during the school day and you keep the phone till the end of the school day. I don't see how that could be deemed unreasonable. Past that, I think one thing to consider is whether it would be appropriate, rather than maintaining the phone and continuing to have the phone seized, is that student, one of the certain point in this process, can no longer bring a cell phone to school, be a consequence. And that way you're not seizing it, they're just prevented from having it on school grounds. That'd be another way to go about this. And I don't know if that's appropriate within the school setting. That's the public policy decision y'all have to make. But that's another way to go about it, and then you don't have to worry about the constitutional implications of a seizure.
I think we'd all agree that to get to that point where if you kept having repeated offenses, it would come down to the kid you'd have to expel the kid. But that's kind of what.
Well, and what you're saying is basically we're seizing it if we keep it overnight.
Yes, if
we
it's
gotta
in
make
your,
sure,
right, if it's
and
in your
that's what we
control,
gotta
it's a
think about.
seizure. So if you have the phone, you have seized the phone.
And if you keep it all week, it's really,
You have
But
maintained
but
that.
part of that is, the coverage for that is if you got into a third, fourth offense type deal, then we reasonably have the power to do that.
Yes, the more
It's
times
just,
they
he's talking
violated the
about,
policy,
he's talking
the,
about civil liability.
the more reasonable an expanded scope of the seizure can become. And also, it's one thing to bring your phone out to text your mom that I'll be home at 4 o'clock. It's another thing to take your phone out to do a bullying incident or call in a bomb threat. So the nature of the violation is also important on the scope of the seizure as well.
So just a blanket rule of keeping the phone overnight could cause an issue. If, for instance, if a child did get his phone out and is texting his mom, and you keep it all night, as opposed to one that's trying to do a bomb threat or bully somebody, that could, because you're,
Well,
Yeah.
offense,
it's a different, like he said, when the guy was walking down the street with a backpack, he can't get out and search his backpack. for
no, but in school, there is an expectation of less privacy. And that's what warrants and makes this able to do. But in your same thing you're discussing, you also got to take into account offense level. How many times has this kid been told? and
Well,
how
that's
many
what I'm
times?
saying,
Yeah.
the first time you're actually
Oh, yeah,
seeing
first
it.
time, yeah, I don't think that would ever fly.
Well, isn't that what you're doing?
Yes.
And I'm
So
not.
it's like a
I'm
little
not-
give, it's like I talked to you on the phone. We're all gonna have to give a little somewhere, I think, if we're gonna try to create a blanket policy. But-
And I'm not saying that seizing through the end of the week, of course, that'll vary. You commit the violation at 1 o'clock on Friday afternoon, it's a 2-hour situation. Based on
Right.
what I heard you say.
Right.
You committed it at 8:30 a.m. on Monday, it's a 5-day. So the scope of it obviously shifts based upon when the offense occurred as well. And, but yes, I agree with you, Mr. Gilly, that if you've done it 4 times versus the first time, that also is a consideration on the reasonableness of the action of the school. So all of that goes into the context of the seizure and determining whether or not the scope of the seizure is reasonable. This has not been specifically parsed out in the law as far as I can tell, so I can't tell you definitively, other than what Craig's opinion is. But short-term seizures are going to likely be viewed as an appropriate remedy to maintain order and safety within a school. And how the courts define short seizures is going to vary on the circumstances. And that could be a matter of hours to a matter of days. But eventually, you're going to have to get that phone back. I think we all agree on that. And it's just a matter of when, not if. So
I'm gonna, acknowledge the chair here. Mr. Ballard.
Just a comment from back here in the cheap seats. One advantage to the Warren County policy is that they use the pouches, which means the cell phones never leave the student's possession. So, I don't know how you do that in discipline situation, but the students always have possession of their cell phones, so you don't run into that problem. So you might want to comment on that as well, because they use a locking pouch that they unlock at the end of the day. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Well, I think we pretty much knocked that out of the park the last meeting, because for 97 cents on Amazon, you can get the magnet that unlocks it.
there are hacks, yeah.
So we pretty well knew every student would have a 97-cent magnet, or they'd be selling them in the stairwells or around the corner in the school anyway. So I think that got knocked in the head on that one. I think, looking at, and just my opinion, and then, like I say, I want to hear from Miss Beth and some others that's been a little quiet. But I think, in my opinion, we're on the right track with our first statement of out of sight and out of mind, basically. Use whatever tool within the school you've got in order to keep these out of sight and out of mind, whether it be a locker or they need to keep them in their bags, purses, whatever. We're just at the offenses, and I think everybody in this room agrees that at least, we're not talking about a overnight confiscation till we're 3+ or 4+ offenses. And I'm open to hearing more about that. I think our number one and number two, I think for the day or something might be considerable, but that's just me throwing that out there. And I think we're all pretty good that we can pretty much do what we want as long as it's reasonable, and I think we all are smart enough in this room. I think we know that reasonable is reasonable.
And that's what, I think it was the U.S. Supreme Court leading decision on it, TLO, New Jersey versus TLO. I think it's the one that said that essentially that's what the school has to do is exercise common sense and doing search and seizures. And so if you stay within the realm of what makes common sense and not go overbroad on what you do, you should be legally within the confines of the Constitution.
First, second, and third offense, I think everybody here is presenting, especially you guys, have presented a great idea. Above that, we are going to have to be serious and stern. We don't want to see nobody above that,
We haven't, we
Right.
haven't, so.
but you still got to have an offense.
I would
Still
like,
got-
if I may, Mr. Chairman, I know Dr. Anderson has a situation now that it's worked for him. I think in his, because of his grade level structure and the elementary grade level structures, I think there needs to be some parent notification somewhere in this process. Now, it may be Dr. Anderson may choose, and Ms. Parsley may choose a first offense. I'm gonna call the parents, or first offense, we take it, we give it back to them in the afternoon. A second offense, that's when we call the parent to come and pick up the phone and tell them that this is the second time that this has happened. That's just a suggestion at this point in time. And then the third offense, we're looking, I think, at lunchroom, what do you call it, Paul?
Lunch
We
detention.
call it lunch detention.
Lunchroom detention, which, I don't know if you know what, that's where the kids have to sit over by themselves and can't have any communication with anyone.
That's a
And then-
reward
and-
for me, not a punishment.
And then it goes on up to ISS, which is in-school suspension, and I think that's where we need to get into some situations that everybody needs to be following, not necessarily, but on the first offense and/or the second offense, I can understand where Mr. Anderson and I think elementary folks, Ms. Parsley, need to get the parents involved in that at that point in time, at that grade level.
Right, I agree, Dr. Powell. Just I'm just penciling down some things that's kind of running through my head. So how I could change, maybe mirror a little bit more of what they have going on. So this is sort of what I've written down. First offense is a warning, a one-day confiscation, right? Second offense, call a parent. If they're able to come pick it up, great. And then there can be some lunch detention with that, okay? Third offense, same, again, parent notification, ISD placement. And then a fourth offense, again, another parent notification. And this is where I get a little bit, what do we do now? We're at a fourth offense. Do we hold the phone over more than a night or more than a day, whatever it may be? Again, I know that Ms. Sellers and Mr. Parsley haven't had any offenses after 3 or whatnot, but, I do think it wouldn't hurt to have some kind of plan in place if someone has reached that fourth offense. Maybe that fourth offense is they can't bring it back to school anymore. It's banned from campus.
But then what do you do
If they bring it.
if they bring it?
If they bring it, so in a situation like that, then I think there is some, ISD time or whatever it may be. But
We gotta come up with that.
And also too, they put them in their lockers when they get there, and they don't have them all day.
correct.
So basically, it's banned, so they're just as well off not even bringing them to school, and then they won't get in trouble, because they can't use them at lunch. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes, they are to
So
be in the locker the
basically-
whole day.
It's banned at middle school, basically. I mean, they have it on the bus, I guess, going home,
They do.
but that's all
And they
that's
are
allowed.
They are allowed to use them in the mornings while they're waiting for that first bell to ring. So there's that time as
And
well.
That's similar
but-
to Warren
but-
County, because they put them in the pouch all day, you put them in the locker all day.
Right.
So I'm wondering what their offenses are, because it's the same situation,
It's in
except they're
That's
paying
right.
for those pouches.
It's on the next page of that policy.
Well, you know,
That's
I
their
really,
offenses.
I don't think it's gonna switch until it gets painful for the parents. And that's where that, you know, you're talking about them not having anybody in the evening for them. Well, if that parent has to take off work to come to get a cell phone, if they don't choose to get the cell phone, you have notified them that they can have the cell phone. So in that case, I wouldn't think it would be you that was accountable. I would think it would be the parent. But about the third time that parent has to get off work to come to get that cell phone, I think we're going to have a meeting with Junior at home. But I think it has to get painful for the parents also, for anything to actually happen.
Ms. Shinch, I agree with you.
And the other thing is, now hopefully my granddaughter's not listening in. It has to get serious with the teachers. Because my granddaughter notifies me all during the day. She'll call me and I'll say, "Are you in class?" "Well, maybe." You know? And so when the students, and she's a part of the gifted program, so when the students run out of what the teachers assign, which I remember what that was like, then they just say, "Take out your phones and play on them." And as long as that's happening, we're not going to have a true cell phone policy. So it has to get real serious with the teachers.
Well,
So-
I think we talked about that and the fact that the way the law reads right now, it says instructional time, but it doesn't define what instructional time is. The conclusion that we came to this morning was instructional time means when you're in the classroom setting. And there's times that the teachers would, especially in the high school, from what Mr. Parcell tells me, that the teachers are asking the students from time to time, and also at the Raider Academy, that they need their phones there to do some instructional work. And I think with what Ms. Beth is saying, is that even if they are having quote-unquote free time in class, they don't need to have that phone out. It needs to be put away. And I know we talked about this morning about the teacher being sure to be on base with us. You can't have one teacher in one class saying, "Well, you know, if you want to take them out, you can take them out. Just don't be talking on them," or whatever the case may be. There needs to be something set up, and the teachers understand that, hey, this is a cell phone policy. If they're not being used for instruction, they're not to be out in the classroom or not to be on. That's my philosophy about it.
Well, it's really unfair to your other teachers, especially when you get to the high school level and the ninth grade academy, because I don't know how many times I would hear when I was teaching, "Well, so-and-so teacher lets me have them out. They're really cool." So it puts teachers who honor the rules into the category of not being cool. And the other teachers who don't honor them, well, those are the cool teachers. And that's not fair. It's not fair to those other teachers. So that's just my opinion.
On the, I'm gonna let Mr. Shore speak, but first, on the, definition of that.
Yes.
I get a different one when you Google. When you Google, and you basically Google instructional time, it's any time the child is under the supervision or instruction of the child. Well, are we not supervising them in lunch? Are we not supervising them in between classes? So there is, and I think we had that discussion, and I think I left it up to everybody to come back with an answer of what they thought instructional time was by this one. And so that could be looked at two different ways as far as what instructional is, because the law that come out basically said, you're gonna stop it. You can't have them, so it is a ban. And then I had another point, but I'll get to it later. I'm gonna let Mr. Shore speak. He's been patient.
I think that Ms. Yinch is correct that, first of all, if it's a policy, we have to follow the policy. And that means all teachers have to follow that policy. You are completely correct. Secondly, it does have to become a hardship. I hate to say that on the parent. If we're not gonna seize the phone, and I agree with Mr. Northcott, seizing the phone for the remainder of the day shouldn't be a problem whatsoever, because you're giving it back to them. But then, if it works out that it gets to number 4, number 5, however you want to work it, ban that phone. they've been given the warnings, they know what it is, and if it's found, it is collected again, call the parents again. You have to come pick it up by 3 o'clock, and it's on the parent. Once again, that's gonna start creating that hardship, but the hardship was put on by their child. It's not by the school system, it's by their child. They've been given the chance, they understand, the parent's been notified several times, but we're not seizing a phone that way, we're banning it, they could call whoever they want to at home, but it's not in our care. If the parents don't pick it up, well, that's on them. But they have to come and pick it up.
That was the point I wanted to make that I forgot. We are sitting here making a decision in which you 3, 4 are gonna have to enforce in your schools. So, like I said in the last meeting, we're big enough, if we're gonna make this decision and force y'all to have to do that, we've got to stand behind y'all and give the support. The entire administration, every one of us have to stick together, and we have to back you through this and support it. And I recommend that actually take place as well. I know I will. And, I did want to say that.
Okay. Do y'all have a problem? I mean, is cell phones a problem at the high school?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think there
Sometimes
are,
we're trying to fix something that doesn't need to be fixed.
no, I,
Well, you got to.
I would
State law
not-
says you have
I
to.
would
know
not
we gotta have a
say-
policy, but.
No, you got to have a policy that bans them.
Well, then
pretty
let's
much
just ban
ban
them.
them.
If that's it, then we don't need to be discussing
That's,
anything.
that's what it says in the law.
That you ban them completely?
Pretty much unless
Well,
it's
then what
used,
are we
unless
talking about?
recourse.
Why are we
and-
even here? We've got the policy then.
No, and that's why we put the first statement as our original policy read. That's why we put that into this policy. Right now, we're just talking about the offenses. We're just trying to come up with the offenses because we knew we had to do that on the first part.
Well, if they're banned, there wouldn't be any offenses. They didn't bring them, the only offense would be if they brought it to school, you'd take it. Tell them, do the same thing. So
But
in other
even
words-
if they're banned, just because you say they're banned doesn't mean they're gonna not bring them. And that's what we're trying to do, is come up with offenses if they do, and they use them. And we didn't get so harsh in our policy
me,
as
when
to
you
say,
ban
we're banning them, they better not touch our property. We said out of sight, out of mind. That way, they do have them on their person, but they don't necessarily have them out videoing fights in between lunch or,
So really.
doing
we're-
things
We're
or-
banning phones. In other words, you're saying we're banning phones the same as guns are banned. So you're not gonna let a person carry a gun.
no,
I
that's
mean,
not what that policy, that's not what's in there says. Says the students may possess personal communication devices
So they're not.
and
banned.
personal electronic devices, so long as such devices are turned off and stored
So-
in
and so that's a
backpacks,
different-
purses. That's what the policy says.
Yeah.
What the law says is you cannot have these out during instructional time unless a teacher requests them for
Right.
instructional.
Allow-
for an activity,
Right.
instructional,
That's what the law says.
Right.
So
Or
the law
health
pretty
or
much says,
IT or, yeah.
Right.
the law pretty much
Understand.
says, out of sight, out of mind, unless the teacher requests
Right.
it. So the out of sight and out of mind, yes, we could have said, no, they just can't even come on our property, but we didn't. We said, you can have them, but keep them out of sight and out of mind. Keep them off, put them in your purse, put them in your locker, use any tool you can. Don't have them out in class, and, I think the general consensus the last time was try not to include them in so much instruction. And
Don't encourage.
so we're not
it.
saying the kids can't bring them into the school, we're just saying
Well,
you
then
can't be using them.
If you're banning
And
them,
playing.
you can't bring them in the school. Because you can't bring a
Frida,
gun
we're
in
not
the
banning
school.
them, it's not saying, I don't know how I'm not, it's not,
There's
I
a-
mean, the law is saying you're not going to take your phone out if you get done early in class, or you're in lunch, depending on the interpretation of instructional time, you're not gonna take your phone out and be TikToking and Facebooking and calling people and texting your mom and dad and all that good stuff. That's what the law
Yes.
is saying. So it's not technically a ban, it's just a ban on usage that
I
our
agree with you
teachers,
there.
won't, it's a ban on usage,
Yeah,
ban on usage.
right.
what
Not
I,
a ban on the phone per se, it's a ban on usage.
what I take from this is that students during instructional time, which is, I guess, to be defined, during instructional time, students will only have the phone out when asked by the teacher for whatever activity that might be. I have teachers in my building that never ask students to get their phones out because they choose to do activities that would not include that. I have other teachers who most might not be fair, many days have students utilize those for an actual instructional activity. I don't mean, you can have them out if you're finished with your work. I mean an actual activity. But I take from this that students will not be able to have their phone out during instructional time just because.
Right.
Just because I'm finished
Right.
with my homework, just because we haven't started class yet, just because. They will not be able to do that.
That's the way I understand it. It's a ban on the usage, not necessarily the device. A ban on the usage unless the teacher requests.
Now, Mr. Parsley, that would mean that the teacher had to request it, and it's not like a kid comes up and says, I'm through with my work, can I get my phone out? It would be something that would be the whole classroom instruction.
I interpret this as a student would not be able to get the phone out simply because they're finished and they ask nicely to the teacher. They would not be able to do that. Now, teachers use differentiated instruction for their classes. You have sometimes levels of students at different grade levels with different competencies, and students at times are doing different activities in class. So theoretically, there could be a group of 5 here on this side of the room doing one activity, another group here, and maybe they rotate every 5 minutes. We do those sort of things, but generally, no, there would be no, I'm finished, can I get my phone out? That should not occur.
Robert's left the building right now, and I'm not saying that Google's right or wrong. Sometimes I don't pay a lot of attention to Google, but I'm going to a superintendent's meeting tomorrow where they're supposed to go over all these new laws that would have bearing on the school systems. And one of my questions is to ask what, and of course, Mr. Northcott knows this, I'm sure, from his stuff. The legislature makes up these things sometimes, and they keep it as gray as they can, and they don't define what instructional time. We're arguing with you again, Robert, what instructional time means. So I want to find out from our school board attorneys what their interpretation is of instructional time. And I think that's part of the question right now that we're not sure what the answer is. If we play with Google, Google's right, but I'm not sure Google knows what this situation's all about.
Well,
Is that right, Mr. Northcott?
I would agree.
but that would
Depends on
also be
intent,
something he
right?
could elaborate on.
To make things more difficult is in one section of the code, instructional time could be defined as this, and another section is defined as that. And so without a definition, it does kind of leave you up in the air on what that means. Does that mean in the classroom, or does that mean anytime you're under
Care,
the roof
custody, and control.
between 8 and 3? I don't know.
You know, you might say with the law that we've looked at, mentioning students who have emergency plans and things like that. Students have IEPs that include, having access, doing that. Maybe it does suggest here that instructional time is simply when you are in the classroom. It makes me wonder why it would even mention, students
true.
with IEPs and things like that, if it's, if every student could have it during instructional. Does that make sense?
Well, but I think we went
Yeah.
through that the last time, and Mr. Westmoreland commented on that, because a lot of times, if they have those type plans and designations, those are used continuously. Like the people that have diabetes and have the sensor on their arm, where they continuously have to keep track, things of that nature, and they use those. So that's why the law gave a lot of variance for that. But I still don't think that defined
Right.
instructional time or while you're in the care, custody, and control.
Can I
Because
say-
while the kids, I mean, from 7 to 3:30, that kid, or 3, that kid is in the care, custody, and control of Gulf County Board of Education.
Can I say this?
Everything.
True.
As far as the public safety concern, and I think which is in large part what has driven this law being passed, if I'm a kid with ill intent and you take my phone away for the 50 minutes or hour that I'm in class, but give it back to me for 10 minutes in between classes, an hour for lunch, whatever my ill intent is, I can do in that 10 minutes or that hour. So it kind of guts the law if you're just giving them back and forth access to it. What's the point of it, as from a public safety standpoint? So I will interject that. I don't think it answers the question statutorily, what do they mean, but I can see how it just absolutely undermines the intent of the law if it's anything other than the entire time they're under the roof while instruction's going on.
Well, I think lots of times things bleed into the school day that happen after school and in the evenings. You know, we've had the new law passed about that. And many things that do happen after hours too, and we can't stop that either.
Sure.
Okay, I just checked on this instructional time in Tennessee, and it says, what is considered instructional time definition, amount of time during which students receive instruction from a classroom teacher in a school context.
And I think the one I sent said the same thing, or under the direction
And this says just,
of a
amount-
teacher,
this is
under the
specific to
direction of a
Tennessee.
teacher or staff. I think it
So-
even put the staff in what I sent.
I would differ to argue with you. I'm not gonna argue.
No,
You're bigger than
that's
I
what
am.
we're here for.
The law says authorizes a teacher to allow students to use wireless communication device for educational purposes during instructional time, which tells me that instructional time is during, when they're in class
That's how I
Becau-
interpret it.
having instruction.
That's logical
That's what it's
because,
saying.
that's logical
Well-
because the teacher, that teacher is not necessarily with the student in the hallway, although
We're
they are under our
supervised.
supervision and we have people in the hallways, that classroom teacher would not necessarily be there. That's
and
a-
then it goes on to say what's an example of instructional time. It says instructional time refers to the period allocated for teaching and learning activities in a school or educational setting. A typical example is a 50-minute math class period where the teacher instructs students on a specific topic and students actively participate in learning activities.
Then
So
we
to
need-
me, instructional time is when they're with that
In
classroom
class.
teacher.
So interpreting this, I think there's two different ways to look at this. You can be distinguishing between school hours and non-school hours. So, you can have your phone during extracurricular activities while you're watching a basketball game, but you can't have it from 8 to 3 while school's going on. Or it can be distinguishing from 8 to 3 between being in the classroom in a formal teaching setting versus walking down the hallway or lunch. And the law, to me, reading it, just isn't clear on which way
I
they're trying
agree.
to distinguish that. And so there's two different ways to go at this, and both of them are logical. But I just think that this is one of those areas that they're probably gonna have to redraft the law a little bit next year to clarify. I just don't think they've given you direction to know that. It's the
And
way
I
it's written right
think-
now.
Miss Melissa was notified that, from TSBA, that there are some actual amendments rolling through right now, and just as soon as TSBA figures out what those amendments are, which may very well entail some things of those that you've described, that would clarify and more direct the answer on that. Because, I'm like you, I kind of know, just from the people I know, what they were talking about when this law came about, mostly stemmed from the Antioch shooting, where they had a lot of phone communication during that day to open the doors and get that stuff going and things of that nature. And then next thing you know, they're pushing this House bill through to ban them in there. So allowing, not here in this classroom, this math class, but go to your locker during class change and you can text and do and video and whatever, negates the whole aspect of where you're trying to cut that communication to the outside world or inner school, you're trying to cut that communication off during the day and keep that attention on school. That's my attention, that's my feeling, and that's just where I feel on this.
And from a
That's what it's
legal-
designed to do.
From a legal standpoint, when there's ambiguity in the law, you go and then look at the legislative intent. And where you get that legislative intent is by looking at the debates while the bill was being considered and what was the proponent of the bill promoting. So when he's up in front of committee or wherever it is that he is presenting the bill for passage, he's explaining the purpose of the bill, what they're hoping to accomplish, and that type of stuff. So this is all online, the videos. You can go on the General Assembly website and you can watch the videos of the presentation of the bills and all the different committees, and you can maybe get some direction from watching those as to what was the intent behind instructional time. There may be some explanation of it there. That's the only thing I know to tell you, because this is, it is very ambiguous as to what that means.
And just to kind of move this forward, I think we did the same discussion the last meeting, and that's where we all agreed that interjecting, because we still mark some stuff out of even our existing policy, and kind of went through that I think we're there at that point to where that's kind of something that, like he said, is going to come down in probably amendments that we're going to have to change anyways. That's going to come at some point. Right now, what we're trying to do is develop the base policy that I bet you will be changing before school starts next year anyways. So, our biggest thing when the state starts defining instructional time, the state starts defining if teachers are really allowed to allow usage just because kind of things, will get clarified. I think our task here today to close this, at least have a policy to move forward with, because we're not changing ourselves one bit with what we put in here to begin with. We're still using what we've used since 2011, minus one sentence, half of one sentence, since we've used since 2011. All we're doing now is defining in policy the offenses. So I think if we moved into the offenses and we just stick to offenses, what do we want our first offense to be? And that's where I'm going to sit here and just take notes and hear the consensus of first offense. If we can agree on that, we'll move forward. And if you feel like sitting here,
Y'all are done with me. I do have some other things I can be doing.
I do
Well,
have, I have one question, Robert, before he skips.
Ms. Yinch does have one more question, but you're welcome to stay as long as you want to, and you're welcome to get up and leave whenever you want to.
All right, we've talked about the possibility of problems with hanging on to the phone as far as lawsuits if something happened. But isn't there also, as the law states right now, isn't there also possibility of lawsuits if some of these situations like Antioch happens and we have not banned those phones to sufficient degree?
Absolutely. You've got a very specific mandate from the General Assembly to enact a policy with the intent to try to mitigate the possibility of those things happening. And if you fail to adopt an appropriate policy, that can bring some large liability on the school system in the county. So yes, absolutely.
Anybody else got anything from Mr. Northcott? And let's move to offense number one.
Thank y'all.
Thank
If y'all
Thank
need
you,
anything
sir.
else
Thank
from me
you.
ever on anything, let me know. I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm gonna come out and visit with you.
Anytime.
Hadn't been there in a while. Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, I'm gonna try to move. Yeah, right now, I'm gonna stick to offenses.
We get instructional.
Yeah, we'll get that, and I'm sure the state will be more than glad to define it before long anyways.
Right here, it says in Tennessee, the Department of Education defines instructional time as the amount of time students are expected to be engaged in classroom learning activities. For grades 1 through 12, this is a minimum of 6.5 hours per day, and kindergarten, 4 hours. So they've got to be in instructional time 6.5 hours, whenever that, and how long is the day? It's,
The school day,
7:40,
Hey,
7:45 to 3:15.
it would be.
so you're proposing that we would give them the phone 2 hours a day?
No, but what I'm saying is, it's not the whole day is considered instructional time. If,
Okay.
so.
So
and
do
that-
you give them the phone for 2 hours a day?
No,
or
I'm
do
not
you-
saying, I'm just saying that's what the definition of instructional time is by the Tennessee Department of Education. And that's not the entire
Well,
day.
are
it's
we
6.5
okay with
hours.
the statement we put into the
And
policy to have a policy right now? Okay. Okay.
so I think we know that instructional time is not all day, according to that. It's
Okay.
It's gotta be 6.5 hours. And that would be like those increments of time that children are being taught directly.
I don't
For-
think we need to be in business of taking up phones every morning and giving them back every afternoon. That's going to create
I agree.
a lot of problems. I know Dr. Stevens in Tullahoma was talking about the pouches. It was going to cost them something like $30,000 to buy pouches for all the students they had in their school system. That's just
Yeah,
one year.
that's-
You know what's going to happen with those pouches. I think. Just a
Well,
thought.
we hope they don't bring them
I think
out.
we need to look at discipline right now, what we're
Yeah.
going to do with them.
There you go. Thank
Regardless
you.
whether they got them or not.
First offense. Let's round robin this, right here.
Okay.
First offense. Jimmy, what do you got? First offense, what's your opinion?
Honestly, I like what's here, that Warren County does, device collected and the fence is documented. So a one-day confiscation, okay, and you just document that.
So one day, or till the end of day,
Till the end of the day, yep.
end of day on number one. End of day, leave it between you and the student.
Yep.
First offense.
So,
Okay?
so between you and the student, meaning the administrator and the student, or the teacher and the student?
I think administrator
I
ought
think
to be involved
administration,
in
That's
any
what
of
I
it.
like it would
thought,
come
but
to the office, like.
I think everybody in this room agrees administrator ought to be in every one of them.
And the parents should be notified in every instance, I believe.
And I agree with that
Okay.
too. Parent
Okay.
needs to be notified.
That's not a bad idea, because you start letting them know as well, then you're passing that liability of notification off.
Yes.
We do confiscate till the end of the day and 3 days of lunch detention and notify a parent on the first offense.
When you notify the parent, are you asking them to come pick up the phone or just
No,
notify them?
the child takes the phone home. I notify them of what's occurred,
Okay.
and the child's phone stays in the office till the end of the day. They pick it up, and the next day they do 3 days of lunch detention.
Okay, so between you two on first offense, the only difference is notifying the parent, right?
Okay,
No,
no
he doesn't do
problem.
lunch detention.
He doesn't do lunch detention, but you do
But
on the first offense.
offense, you do lunch?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I like
We're
the,
pretty simple.
Yeah,
We follow the policy.
you scared them poor little kids to death, and they don't never do it again.
Basically, we follow the policy that, as it's written. We, out of sight, out of mind. They keep them in the backpack. If they get them out, then we do first offense. We always call the parent. Parent's notified, and they say, come pick it from the office. And then they come get it. If they get there that day, they do. If they don't, they don't. Or if they get there at like, 1 o'clock, because that's when they can get there. That's when I get it back to them.
Okay.
That's
So
what-
you take it up the first time.
Yes, and then but I always call the parent, and then we may have to pick it up.
So all three of you take them up. All three of you call the parent. So the difference is lunch detention.
Yeah, I'm the hard deal one.
So
Okay.
that's lunch detention.
Okay.
and
Well,
the
no,
fact
what
that
if the,
the
you don't
parent
send them,
doesn't
do you
pick it
send
up
them home
and
at the end of the day with the children?
Pardon, what?
No, the only,
Do you send them home with the student
At
at
the
the end of the
Leah's
day?
the only
But
one
you
the
don't?
parent picks
Right.
it up.
Okay.
We do.
parent picks it up there, kid picks it up there.
We do
And-
have.
Paul,
2
are
points.
you,
get 2
So
points.
the kid picks it up at the end of the day.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
now,
so we
He's
got
with
3
me.
kids pick up, 1 parent pick up.
No,
We get parent
Did the
pickup
kid
and the
pick it
child
up
gets
first time
2
from you?
citizenship points for not following the policy. This is the
Okay.
current electronic policy that we have, and we take 2 points from them for not following the policy, and the parent gets 1 point.
Okay.
It seems
So-
like everything's similar. Like we could get this, know, everybody's doing kind of the same thing.
Everybody's doing the kind of the same, I'm trying to pick out the
Yeah.
differences, and right now, the only difference I see
It's lunch
is
detention.
parent versus kids. One over here, parents does, and you do
I
lunch,
I do lunch detention.
And we can do that. That's not a problem.
Or I can
okay?
change.
So, I mean, that's
Paul.
fine.
So we're doing lunch detention now.
Okay.
I don't have any,
we're
So
back
let's just leave
to,
it the same. Let's, in my opinion, secondary can just do the
okay,
confiscation.
so now we're at end of day,
Yep,
Yep.
end of day, parents are notified,
yes,
kid can pick up.
yes. Robert, let me give you this piece of paper.
I've got
do you
yours
have
right
it?
here.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
got it too. I'm
All right.
also following on the actual policy
Okay,
that we
gotcha.
wrote, so that I know, make
Yes,
sure
ma'am.
what's,
Everybody's assigned to that except Leah. Your
2
kid,
points.
your kid
Yeah.
doesn't, the kid doesn't pick it up.
But
the
that's
parent
kinda
picks it
different
up.
in
They get
elementary,
two
I
citizenship
think.
points taken,
Yeah.
and then we call the parent comes gets it.
And those children are younger and not as responsible.
That's what I think.
how
Yeah.
how would you feel in the elementary setting if you followed this same thing? You take it up, but you let the kid have it back at the end of the day. You still call the parent,
I'd be fine with that.
and you
Okay,
don't get
that's
in the
good.
citizen.
She's gonna let the kid take it home.
Okay.
I-
So,
You're
Frida,
good.
we have done end of day, kid picks up, parents are notified for first offense. Am I
Yes.
forgetting anything?
How about detention? Y'all don't
the
do
lunch detention.
Lunch detention.
Both of y'all
Lunch
do lunch
detention.
detention. You don't.
I,
do-
I'm fine
He's
with
gonna
that.
do it.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
You know,
Do y'all do any of that?
You know,
They're little.
they just.
Yeah, I mean, I hate putting them,
Yeah.
you know.
No.
Yeah.
Other things that.
Right.
I mean, I always had to sit by
Right.
myself in lunch in
Right.
elementary, but that's different.
So you can just do the, you don't do anything.
you know, one,
2 points.
one thing we could discuss, and I don't know if we need to get into this depth. I don't know if we need to be in the depth of determining how many days of lunch detention.
We'll
let
get
that
there.
be by school. I don't know if that needs to be by school. Maybe it does.
Let's
You
get
know.
us a first offense, and when
And
we
then
get a
we'll roll
first
on.
offense, I think we
Let's roll
could
on the
really.
second.
Okay, we got the first done here.
Yeah.
Let's roll to the second one.
Well, the only thing we haven't added to first is a lunch detention, if we're gonna do that, or,
Did
We
y'all
all-
say y'all's all good with that?
We all are doing it,
And
is
then-
what we
Yeah,
decided.
Jimmy's,
And she's
he's-
I'm okay with that.
but elementary is not doing a
And
lunch
2
detention
points. In lieu of lunch detention, she's doing 2 points.
That's what I'm doing.
for
Can-
elementary.
Can they not do it? Can they not do lunch detention?
They can't.
I mean, that would be a
Oh,
punishment.
mean old Kelvin.
I'm trying to make it first offense, everybody's the same, it's got the same thing. It's not that difficult for
Being mean to them babies.
Parsley, what do you have on the first offense?
well, so we do a return to the student. We talk to a parent, and we do lunch detention, but we're not doing 3 days of lunch detention. So, I mean, maybe that's a point of discussion, or maybe that's a school decision, on the number of days of that.
I'm, just in my,
Second offense is third offense.
They go to ISD for 1 day on second offense.
yeah, just my opinion, I think on the first offense, I think a day of lunch detention. I don't have an issue with splitting, that's for secondary.
Well, she's
don't
fine
have
with
a-
that. So
Yeah.
we're
She is
good.
fine with 1 day of lunch?
She's good
Okay.
with lunch.
All right,
So we're gonna
so
make
first
first
offense,
offenses 1 day?
system-wide, 1 day
Okay,
lunch
all right.
detention.
Mr. Chair, are we going down exactly what Warren County has and just,
That's what I'm doing right now, is I'm just writing them in the columns.
okay.
Now I've run out of room. Get me another sheet here to write on. So second offense,
Would be 3 days of lunch detention then?
I think that is appropriate.
okay, so second offense, we're gonna do 3 days. Now, we're still going to confiscate for the day,
Yes. And notify parent.
all right, and notify parent. But is this where we make the parent come get the phone
Yes.
On the second offense?
on the second offense? Parent has to come pick it up at the end of
It's
the
gotta start
day.
getting painful, or they're not gonna,
I agree.
follow through with the
Are we
kids.
requiring the parent to pick it up on the first offense, or do you want to?
Second,
No.
No.
So give it back to the child. Okay.
Speak up, Jim.
I mean, I'm all for it for the parent to pick it up.
okay.
I'm fine with that.
It's fine.
You okay with that?
First or second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, so second offense, we're 3 days, lunch, confiscate, and parent pick up. obviously you're gonna notify the parent because they
Right.
gotta come pick it up.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
Parent pickup, and then, and that's still end of day,
Right.
end of day. Okay. All right, third.
Well, we're not through the second yet. What's the second penalty?
3 days lunch detention
3 days lunch detention?
Yes.
and parent pickup at the end of the day
Yeah.
instead of the child.
Confiscating the parent, then the parents, the parent's been notified twice, the kid's been notified twice, but it took the parent to come get the phone, so you're painting a picture
On number two.
on number two.
Gotcha.
Third,
Collect and return end of day, parent pickup, 1 day of in-school detention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You may have different thoughts.
No, that's fine with me.
Fine.
so
Did you say
you're,
parent pickup again,
Mhm.
Paul? Okay, end of day.
You said 1 day.
One day.
End of day, you know,
But 1 day in this.
1 day.
1 day in-school detention.
Yeah,
okay, so we're gonna drop 3 days of lunch detention and move to a day of in-school,
Well,
or two, or
move
3 days.
from 3 days of
the
lunch.
lunch detention to
To
1
3
day
days
of
of
ISD.
ISD.
No, 1
One
day.
day.
1 day.
1 day of ISD, Robert, on third offense.
Now, it says here with Warren County that
Mine wasn't one.
students not allowed to bring the device back for the rest of the year.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. You're gonna confiscate,
You're gonna notify the parent,
well, the parent's gonna have to pick up
right?
for the third time also. Pick up, this is easy stuff to do, at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, we're dropping the lunch and we're moving toward ISD,
Which
Correct.
is a more severe.
which is the
Right.
more
It's
severe
all day
penalty.
rather than that
It's
25
an
minutes.
all-day
Right.
in-school suspension. So you're moving to more severe. However, okay, the Warren County's third offense doesn't show,
We do I say fourth offense would be when you take the phone up for the rest of the year.
They do.
Give them
yeah,
three
I
times-
think
three
once we
times
get
an
to there,
hour.
we'll talk about that, yeah. Once we get to 4. Right now on 3, the 1 day, y'all are proposing 1 day of in-school detention.
I could see, because this is a third offense, we could do more than 1 day of ISD. I could see that we could do 3 days of ISD. Like this,
fine.
this is not, this
You're
is
gonna
not
have to
anything
be
new,
serious.
right?
Well,
Like this-
also, we've
None of-
only, we have very few third
Yeah, we-
offenses,
I mean,
Paul.
Yeah.
That is.
So
Okay.
if
We
you
could
make it
increase
stiff,
it to 3,
if
yeah,
you make it stiff, when you get the third time's
Yeah.
a charm, buddy.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. 3 days.
in-school
3 days
suspension
in
on
school.
offense Number
On
3.
number
Yeah.
three.
Number 3. So confiscate, parent pickup, end of day,
Yes,
3 days ISD.
yes.
Now, I think we ought to end with a 4th and above.
Okay.
Just take the phone away.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think we ought to go with a 4th and above, that, confiscate, parent pickup, do we want to stay with the end of the day or keep it a day or 2?
I don't think we keep it a day or 2.
Yeah, I don't like keeping them.
Yeah, nobody likes keeping them for the liability of it.
Right.
But I
Keep it
do
up.
think by then they should
All
not
right,
be
end
allowed
of
to
day.
come back.
So confiscate, parent pickup, end of day. Phone,
Banned from campus.
banned from
Not allowed
campus.
in the school building.
Not allowed on campus.
When they
We're
rest
not
of
allowed
the
to bring the
school year.
device back
Oh.
for the rest of the year.
Car
Allowed, not allowed
in school, inside the
I
building.
like that, not allowed.
inside,
Do what?
I like that. And
inside the school building.
I like the revoking of the parking privilege from accident. That would
I
definitely
agree.
get somebody's attention.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Phone not allowed inside the school building, rest of year.
And on that third offense, I like the parking privileges on the third one, like Warren County has, because by that point, you've got a parent They have to bring.
Then you're gonna have to
bus.
yeah, but then you're gonna have to refund their money back because of the permit they buy.
It brings several issues to get, but.
Yeah, I think
you
that'd be
know.
not.
Do you have to refund them if
I'd
they've
say
broken
that's
a
their
rule like
loss.
that, Robert?
No, I don't
so.
think you would have to
I
refund
don't
them,
think
but
so.
Now,
I mean, that's just,
I
they
think
make
it's
that choice.
easier to deal with the cell phone issue and argue with a parent than your kid's not driving to school
Well, that's
Yeah,
true.
'cause
when they paid for a
Right.
permit.
You're
I
right.
think you're gonna have a lot more headache
Well,
out of
I think they're
that.
talking about just the parking spot though, right?
Here's the only place you're gonna have that problem.
Yeah, we don't have
Now-
that.
You got a few sometimes, but you don't charge.
Not-
If it's important here that we be uniform in what we do, then there doesn't need to be anything related to parking in the parking lot here.
Right.
Another point I'll make, which doesn't mean it couldn't be this way, but there are students who get banned from parking in our parking lot. We do that due to parking offenses. In other words, if anything occurs out in the parking
Yeah.
lot,
Right.
you know, that's a potential consequence.
Skate, parent pickup, end of day, phone not allowed on school the rest of the year. Do you get
I'll-
into ISD?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I was gonna say.
Well, we could actually, in four plus, we could sidestep here just a little bit and have a first, second, third, and fourth of the fourth and above when it comes to discussion of ISD. You could start
Go
out
5,
with
10, and
your
then
first,
15.
second,
That's
third,
what
and
I
fourth.
agree with that.
Huh?
Do a five, like on the first, when you get to 4, the
Yes.
first time, it'd be 5 days, and then 10 days, and then 15?
Something like that.
Okay.
You know, the elementary's gonna run into a problem with this on the
Okay, did you
in-school
see that?
detention.
See, if we have
We
four
don't
and
have anywhere
above,
for
we do
in-school
these two
detention.
anyways,
It's like,
You'd
But then
to
we
an
have
alternate
four
something
subcategories.
Instead of in-school.
that the first of the
Yes, I
fourth,
yeah, I could
5
do
days.
I,
15
you know,
days
I don't know why she
second,
couldn't
10, see what I'm saying?
take away privileges at the elementary level that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. When
Instead of,
elementary does not have in-school detention.
No.
Yeah.
There's not somebody hired to do that, so they actually run into some problems when it comes to
Well,
in-school detention.
how often do you take up funds that would get to that point, Leah? Have you ever?
I never have.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
you're not gonna,
Probably not gonna get to that point, maybe.
but that would be.
And that's
still
also
there.
something
Be
that,
there
we I mean,
for
we
you.
all know this is a trial. We're gonna have to live it
And see if
once
it
we
works.
develop it.
And see if it works.
It's just if you were wanting all grade levels to be the same, elementary would not be able to pull that one.
right.
Ms.
so
Yeah,
Parsley.
maybe-
that would be moot point, because she
I
said that's
agree.
never
She never
happened.
gets to that
And you
point.
could just put in take away privileges for
Yes.
elementary.
Ms. Parsley, how many kids would you guess have a phone in your building?
I was
I
gonna
have
ask
no
that, thank you.
idea, because we never have a problem with them getting it out.
Scare them poor kitties. Keep it in your bag.
Yeah. There is no cell service
That's
out
the
there.
truth.
That's true.
Yeah, in the
So-
middle of the night.
Mr.
so
Parsley,
we
your
are-
question, there's not a whole lot. There are some, but we're talking about there's very few
Right.
at the 5th grade level.
Probably, yeah, more in the 5th grade level.
So on 4, we are at confiscate, parent pickup, end of day,
Right.
regardless of any of the 4
They're banned.
subsides. Phone not allowed inside the school building because you're getting, look, you're done for the rest of the year. Don't let me catch you again. If we
Right.
do, the first time is 5 days, second time is 10 days, 15 days, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I also like in what they have here in Warren counties, and I think this is under third offense, restriction of attendance at school-sponsored activities.
I don't know.
So
I don't.
Social
That may-
probation.
what
That
we
may
call
be a-
that is social probation, which we
Yeah.
utilize for lots of misbehaviors on multiple offenses.
Well, I
Yeah, we
agree,
got to that
I
point,
agree
but
with
not-
Ms. Yinch that, and I agree with that ideology, but make it against the parents, not the student. They can't come to the football game.
Oh, yeah, Robert, okay.
Elementary has, we have a citizenship point.
Yeah.
They start with 100, and if they get below a certain average, then they lose their field trip. So,
Yeah, I remember all that.
That could be your
Back
fourth
when I was in
offense.
school.
That could be your fourth offense.
well, if they lose.
I got to make a few.
Right.
That low, then they would lose their.
Ms. Parsley, don't forget you're doing this for all 6
Yes.
elementaries.
Yes.
So they all do it different in that
Yes,
sense.
there's
But
6
they-
of us, so,
Yeah, but
I know
once
there's
we
another
adopt this, they'll all be
elementary
the same.
yes. And if they, I know there's other elementary
Okay.
schools that take citizenship points away and that sort of stuff.
I'm going to, go ahead, Mr. Paul.
Well, I was going to make another comment about social probation. Some examples of what we use that for. If a student gets into a fight, they automatically go on social probation. What that means is they are not eligible to go to our dances. They're not eligible to participate in athletic or club activities or fine arts activities. Now, that doesn't mean school day classes. It means evening things. And we put them on social probation for a time. What we do is set a time period that they are on social probation, and we give them a time to review that. And if we have not had additional issues, they can be removed from social probation. We do that for if there's a fight. We do that if a student accumulates too many unexcused absences from school. And I tell you what, that really works well with the unexcused absences because students want to be able to go to the homecoming dance. They want to be able to go to the prom. And unfortunately, occasionally, we have a student or two that are not able to do that because they accumulate so many. But I'll tell you this, we make clear to these students, here's where you stand with your attendance. If you get to this number, you will be on social probation. And so that they all know where they are, but unfortunately, it still happens occasionally.
Well, we just named 4+ on offense 4, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4 at 5, 10, 15, and 20 days of ISD. If we just simply added a number 5,
And put
social probation and 20 days ISD.
Yeah.
That's our worst
that's fine.
so far.
I mean, I guess, yeah, and a suggestion.
Yeah,
I
but
would
look,
make-
Frida,
see the rest of
hey, Frida, you get to violate the policy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. 9 times before you get that bad.
Now, one thing that we find, and I think Ms. Sellers does it the same way, the maximum number of in-school detention days that we have done
Is 15.
is 15. And that is because we
I'm
feel
on.
like if a student misses any more than that, the best environment for them is going to be an alternative school environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're looking at almost a month of school.
But
when you
because
look at
when
it.
they are in in-school
It is a month of
detention,
school.
there's not a teacher. Now, it's not that they don't receive any help, but we're relying on
We're removing them from the
classroom
instructional
teachers
setting.
going by there
Yeah.
during planning and things like that. At the alternative school, they have teachers.
I got you covered then.
What'd
How
you
about
put?
this? 4, number 1,
Oh, wait. Oh, okay.
first time you violate number 4,
It's 5.
it's 5 days.
Okay.
The second time, 10 days. Third time, 15. Fourth,
You got a cost.
social probation and alternative school.
I got it.
We're done with you.
Gotcha.
We don't have alternative school.
Now, Leah, Leah, you don't
But
have
we
any
already talked about how this
consequences.
doesn't apply to you.
Leah, you don't have any consequences to deal with.
Another discussion.
So I put on there. I'll
You're
put
fired.
secondary campuses,
You're done.
and I'll put citizenship points for elementary, but she needs to
Yeah, I think she,
figure elementary
but-
out.
yeah, well, we're, yeah, okay. Let me reread these and tell me, somebody catch me if I got off.
Okay.
First offense,
Yes.
period. End of day, student gets it back, parents notified, 1 day lunch detention. Second offense, 3 days lunch detention, confiscate the phone until the end of the day. The parent has to pick it up. Obviously, the parent is notified because they had to pick it up.
Right.
Third offense, confiscate, parent pick up, end of day, 3 days ISD. All right. On number 4, first time, is confiscate, parent pick up, end of day, phone not allowed inside the school building the rest of the year. Number 1's 5 days ISD.
Right.
Same thing on the next, except 10 days. Same day on the next, except 15. Then our ultimate, most serious punishment possible for those who cannot get the hint after 8 times is social probation and alternative school. However, we don't have alternative school in elementary
Or social.
or social probation.
Can you do
I-
a
I-
points?
That would be falling into this.
Well, your social probation could be considered as field trips and
Well, that's true.
extra.
It could be like the point thing
forfeit of remaining points.
Maybe we have to put a little note down there that elementary.
With the exception of elementary.
Right.
This applies to everybody, all this applies to
Secondary
everybody over the school
consequences
system
only.
with that area, with the exception of
Right.
elementary.
You know,
Good job.
another point is, when students are assigned to the alternative to the cost center, they are not able to be on another school campus anyway, so they cannot participate in extracurriculars. I'm gonna suggest that, and we could discuss it or not, but I feel like consistent with what we do at the high school, students are placed on social probation for other things that happen repeatedly. And I really feel like it would be appropriate for that social probation, not being able to do the extracurriculars, to take place prior to when we're currently saying it's going to. It looks like, but I don't know how you all feel. I mean, but I feel like
You mean they should have that
earlier,
way before
earlier.
then?
That's
Third
exactly what I'm
offense,
saying.
like
I mean,
third offense.
maybe a fourth, third, I
think
could go with
third.
that, but.
Third, okay, we can
I
add,
mean, by
that's
then,
fine.
it's just
The social
rebellion.
probation
will
added
not
to the
Continue
third.
to happen.
Maybe the
And it
fourth,
doesn't
where you've got that 5 days
Yeah.
in school suspension,
Oh.
and then,
Just when you get to the fourth, what if we did that, Paul? Just
That-
when you get to the fourth, all of them get, even with the first.
Because you can't bring the
Yeah.
phone for the remainder of the year, that's like social, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could say it's
So
similar.
they're gonna
That
not wanna
makes
get
sense.
to
Yeah,
They're not supposed to
yeah.
have-
So when you get to number 4,
You're
When you
gonna
get
have
to number
social
4.
probation
you're gonna have social probation.
for any of those offenses.
Yeah,
Okay.
Is that okay, Paul?
yeah, and if the behavior continues, you're not gonna be ever, I mean, you're not
You're
gonna
not
be
gonna get
removed from
back.
social
What would
probation.
elementary do? Field trips?
That would be their.
That would be
extracurricular.
considered social probation,
Right, right.
social event like that,
Yeah.
so.
What
okay.
about the behavior contract that Warren County does? Can you do a behavior contract between the student and the parent?
we tried
Were they
that
both
once, and
in-
it was a total
It was a
nightmare.
total disaster.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, certain the same parents would agree, but you get,
Alternative
Someone went
school is our
back.
final,
Yes. That's the
Maybe
final
that'll get-
hurrah.
okay,
All right, let me read mine back and let's see.
okay.
Are we
Or
free?
I can read it to be on record, and then we can have a motion to such,
Gotcha.
because
I can get it from that.
we're basically accepting the provided draft with these that I'll read off again, offenses, plugged together is what we're going to create as our policy. And then we'll do a motion. And I'll read those off. Right? I think that's where we are, is at the point now, I think we have completed this to the point to have something to start with. I would entertain a motion that accepts the draft policy we were all given of 6.312 with exception of the noted offenses from that draft and interjecting the offenses as we have just sat here and discussed, beginning with the first offense is confiscation till the end of day. The student can get the phone back. The parent is notified, and 1-day lunch detention. The second offense is confiscated. The parent can pick up the phone at the end of day, as they'll be notified to, and 3 days lunch detention. The third offense is confiscate the phone. The parent picks it up, the end of day, 3 days of ISD. Fourth offense is an automatic social probation, confiscate the phone, the parent pick up at the end of the day. The phone is not allowed inside the school building the rest of the year. The first time when you hit number 4 is also includes 5 days in school detention. The second time, 10 days. The third time, 15 days. And the fourth time is the charm of alternative school. And I think I read that out properly to everybody. If they nodded their head, I'll accept the motion as such. That's under social probation.
We just don't have alternatives. That would be the difference with us and you all.
So I'll entertain a motion as such.
I
So,
I
ladies first.
still have a problem with the 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. I mean, by the time a kid gets to that point, they've hardly been to school in a regular classroom. So,
Say that again, Ms.
That's-
Yinch, I couldn't hear you.
well, when you do 5 days, then you do 10 days, and you do 15 days before you go to alternate school, they've hardly been in the classroom that year, and I just really am concerned at that point about whether they're even going to pass.
Well, I guess there's no other consequence. I mean, we only have lunch detention and ISD, so if
Yeah.
we would just have to decide not to give them a consequence then. I mean, I don't know
Other
what
than
else we could do.
alternative school quicker, if, like
Well,
Mr.
we only
Parsley
have
says.
like 7 spots for my school, and you have 11?
11 is what I was.
Is Jimmy?
I have
Okay.
8.
So
I
it can't
didn't
be
realize
utilized
that.
as much, so we're
And
gonna have
I,
to put it, we're gonna have to scatter it
it's
down
just
the
not
line.
really an option
Okay.
for us.
There's always corporal punishment, but we can argue about that one other day.
No, that's another day.
No room in the inn.
I will say this, Mr. Chair, I know we've talked a lot about cell phones specifically, but in my mind, we're also talking about smartwatches, right? And those other devices that can create the disturbance in the learning process. I mean, I'm assuming.
And I think that's why this kind of appears to be a little bit lenient until multiple times. That gives,
Because it could be more than one device. I
Yeah,
mean, the first
that
time
could-
it could be a
Exactly.
cell
So,
phone, second time it could be a wall.
first and
Yes.
second, in my opinion, first and second is not really harsh at all.
I would agree with you.
It's not really harsh at all. So that gives plenty of time to define those gadgets and gadgets
Uh-huh.
before we start getting into stiffer penalties. Because by then, parents and child all should understand what we're talking about.
Right.
So those are kind of lenient to get to that
So
point.
we will just need to make very clear that those watches can't be visible. I mean,
Same as cell phone.
Yeah.
just like a cell phone.
So, okay, so we're still on where I was,
Okay.
what I read.
We can just put.
Do I need to read that again?
AirPods, smartwatches, and headphones. Because no kid should be with a headphone unless
Yeah.
They
they're.
like those.
Frida telling
Are
them how to
those-
do their
are those
test.
things in their ears as
Yeah.
AirPods?
You'd be telling them how to do their test, right? Good.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we accept a policy that's been drafted here with the offenses that you have read through.
Okay. Do I need to read these back to anyone else? It's on record. I don't really want to. So, motion has been made by Mr. Jimmy Anderson,
I'll second that.
and Mr. Cordell has seconded. Is there any actual discussion? Okay,
I think it's great that it's uniform.
On the,
Yeah.
the fifth one, they go to, we have alternative school there, is that correct?
No.
No, it's still in school detention on the
There's
fourth
no
offense.
alternative school.
Yeah, I've
On-
got it right here. I'll give it to you. Here.
okay.
It is, but we know that that's not applicable for our elementary students.
Right.
So
I
should
thought
that-
I hope we have this policy revised before it ever gets to the point an elementary kid has made it that far in this. Okay. Any more discussion? Nope.
Aye.
Mr. Jimmy is a aye.
Aye.
Ms. Parsley's aye.
Aye.
Mr. Parsley. Ms. Beth.
Aye.
Mr. Cordell.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
And I will vote aye. So that is passed 7-0.
Mr. Chairman, a question. Marshall, about how many students do you guesstimate at the elementary school have a cell phone?
Not many at all.
Yeah.
I don't know because they leave them in their backpack and we don't have a problem with that. And if it is, it's more or less in like third, fourth, fifth grade.
Okay. I figured it's fourth or fifth.
Yes, it's been just a little over an hour. Is everybody okay with about 5 minutes to run to the restroom or something? and then let's get back, and we're gonna knock these others out that we put off the last time. I promise, we're gonna do it quick. Welcome back, folks. We're going to continue here, and we're going to jump to item number 12, policy 4.214, use of artificial intelligence programs.
And there should be a sheet, that's what's in front of you,
Okay.
kind of right there, there's yours, and you got a copy, you got a copy?
And then I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Damewood to explain this.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you, as I watch my levels. All right, so, this is pretty much done. The AI policy is in line with what the state the TSBA model was. I took theirs, and every time we mentioned something, I marked it out, so I'm covering everything that's in the TSBA policy. And I wrote it as this way because I literally want to take and cut and paste this one and put it in the RUP, so they'll mirror each other. So what's in the RUP will be exactly what this is. So that's why it's written more in a handbook style rather than a policy style. But it doesn't really matter from a grammatical standpoint, because we have several of those type of policies anyway. So if you just want to read through it, and if you have any questions, I will be glad to entertain those.
I think we have seen these. I know I have reviewed them.
Well, now, the AI policy, I did change it some to match this a little better.
Yes.
But in the RUP, it's a little different, but it's basically, it's just reworded to make a little bit more grammatical sense. And the use of AI to help correct grammar in this may or may not have been done. Yeah,
I like
got
how
it.
you put that.
Yes.
Just off the top of the hand, I don't see any changes or issues.
And I think anything that would be grammatical. It basically, just an outline, and that's for those people that are listening. It says that we follow all state and federal laws. We respect personal privacy for students and staff. Staff are supposed to model responsible use. Students are not allowed to use it for cheating, but all students are allowed to use AI at appropriate levels and with the teacher's permission, and that proper use of AI is supposed to be taught to students before they go through AI. I don't think so. Oh, I guess it is. Oh, it's just.
Please silence all digital devices.
I sat on my phone tracker
Oh.
and it did that. Anyway, I guess I'm too big for these chairs. Anyway, so that's what that pretty much does. Any questions?
Unless anybody's got any questions for Mr. Damewood, I'd like to accept a motion to approve item number 12 as presented by Mr. Damewood.
I'll make the motion that we accept it as presented by Mr. Damewood.
All right, motion's been made by Mr. Anderson to accept.
I'll second.
Ms. Parsley has seconded. Is there any further discussion?
On this computer, I believe if we accept that we can delete this 4.061.
Yeah, I don't.
It will replace.
What?
4.214, right?
No, we're not to that yet. We're not, you're thinking about the acceptable use policy. That's what's
Yeah,
going to be the
no,
next
we're on
thing.
the
This is
AI.
just the AI policy.
Yeah, we're on the AI.
Understood.
Yep.
So this won't,
Okay.
well, they are somewhat similar.
Anything further? Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones, Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
Mr. Cordell,
Aye.
Mr. Parsley.
Aye.
All right, I'll go aye. That is 7-0 passes. Item 12 is complete. Let's jump to 15.
That is the responsible use policy. This is the same one basically that we had last year, and principals, remember that there was a requirement that everybody go through the online registration. The one reason why this is timely is so that Dr. Cornelius can get this as part of the online registration. That's what's important. And we didn't have, once everybody figured out that everybody meant business, that they had to do the online registration, things went a lot smoother. So that's something that hopefully they learned that from last year, and they will be a lot quicker at doing this. So anyway, if you go through it, the only things that are different are what are in red, with the exception of the AI policy, because I cut and pasted this one into that one. That won't be red, but that's all, it's exactly what we just agreed to. So if you go through, the only real changes that I did were under the personal devices. I don't know if, have you talked about any of those yet?
Just for a few minutes.
And what I tried to do was make it as generic as possible, so whatever you guys came up with on the policy, it would work. So that's why, that's all that is.
Okay.
It doesn't have anything about consequences. It just says phones can be used, but everything has to be in accordance with school policy. So, you know, whatever that is, that's what I did there. And then going on, so the AI section is just the same as ever. Then the one other thing I had to change was on the permission slip, the parent permission form. I wanted to specifically say that Coffee County School District is going to maintain a Google Workspace account for students, just to make sure that name Google was in this permission, so they understood that. And the next thing, we had to add voice. If you recall, Dr. Blessing mentioned this, that all of a sudden we had a test where they had to have a voice, and we didn't have the word specifically voice. So that's pretty much what that was, and I just rewrote it to be a little bit better down there at the bottom. And that is the only changes that were made to this. And same thing on the digital parent guardian form, make sure that Google Workspace was mentioned. And I don't know, I've read the permission slip and the CCSS coffee. I don't know. I just cleared that up. That's just a little bit of different grammatical stuff. Okay. So that took care of all that. And you might wonder why there was some philosophy that I talked about when I rewrote this last year. Why is it all on one policy? And this is what Ms. Westmoreland was talking about. I saw it would be better to put both acceptable uses into one policy, so the teachers or the staff could see what students had to do, and students could see what staff were supposed to do. Since it's all in the same policy, we don't have to have separate ones. And that way, we can get rid of both of those policies, the student agreement and the staff agreement, and then put it all in one. The only thing that's different is there's a staff sign sheet and a student one. Of course, the staff one's not included in online registration.
But the way presented is going to one.
Yeah, well, yes. Well,
Yeah.
that's what it was last year.
That's
But yeah,
what I said,
I
yeah.
just, in case somebody had a question while we're getting rid of those other two, they've
Yeah.
been combined into one.
Yeah.
We didn't do that
That's what I
last year.
thought.
We just left those two
Right.
as part of the policy.
Okay, if anyone has any questions for Mr. Damewood or would like to make a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the student responsible use policy, and what all does this cover, Mr. Daniel?
This covers every human being that's,
I'm trying to put it into a motion.
acceptable, responsible use policy.
Okay. I move that we accept the responsible use policy as presented by Mr. Daniel.
Okay, do we have a second?
Well, I don't know exactly how that works.
This would replace.
Just,
It would-
and maybe you want to add and replaces whatever policy numbers she has there. I don't know, right?
I believe I have 4.2 and 4.
And there should be two of them, because one was staff and one was
It's
student.
4.4061 and
62.
4.4062. Is that correct?
Yes, those are the
Okay.
two. What was the 4.214?
That was probably, was that the artificial intelligence?
That was the
one?
AI.
Okay, so it will replace the AI, all three policies, right?
No.
I don't think it replaces.
No,
No.
the state requires a specific AI policy.
So we're gonna leave that one, so
Mhm.
the RUP here will replace the 4.4061 and the 4.4062,
Yes.
as it's all being combined into one.
Same principle as why we have to have a phone policy, even though we have a phone policy in the responsible use policy.
So your motion would be to accept the RUP policy as presented by Mr. Damewood, replacing current policy 4.4061 and 4.4062.
All right.
That sounds right to me.
All right, I'll start it again. I make the motion that we accept the RUP policy as presented by Mr. Damewood, which will replace the 4.4061 and the 4.4062 policy.
Correct. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been seconded. Anything else to discuss? All right, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Mr. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
Mr. Cordell,
Uh,
Ms. Jones, and chair's aye. That's 7-0. That is complete. And that also takes care of agenda item 16, because it is now moot because we have removed that policy. Replaced. So that took care of 16. So, okay. Item number 2, agenda item number 2, the promotion and retention, we are kicking that one till we can get the shared policy presented to everybody. The one with changes, because everybody has one, it's not got any of the changes in there for consideration. I don't mind.
Do we have to accept this artificial intelligence policy?
We did that before we did this last one you made a motion for.
Oh, goodness. I need to go eat supper.
Well, I'm trying to hurry.
So the only thing that changed on the promotion and retention that we had was, it was and or, after the student's IEP, and or the 504 and or the ILP. So
I don't-
ILP is something that was moved.
I don't have that. I have, my changes of the promotion and retention was large.
And then this needs to say state assessment.
I gotta find what I did with my stuff. Frida, was you digging in my stuff? Did you take my papers?
No, I got that right there.
Did you take my papers?
You want to look at this one? What is it, this?
No, I had them laying out here and then I put them away,
This is what I thought.
because we were moving.
It's what Mr. Dane would sit in front of us.
We just went, no, this ain't them.
Oh, okay.
That's the, no, I couldn't have eaten them.
Did you leave that over?
Here we are.
There.
The changes in red, they don't have these. They don't have this.
That was what you were gonna go over.
Yeah, but they don't have them.
Oh, I
And
can.
just the way to, which I can, it's only one, if y'all want to, it's only one sentence in a certain or a little paragraph, small paragraph in the place. I can go over that. We can get it over with. So we'll just go on to right here to number 2. Policy 4.603, promotion and retention. I think you all have that. Model policy. The changes, I think that were kind of just automatically put in here was in the first section, line 3. It was IEP and or 504 team. I think we scratched that out and went to IEP, 504 team, and or ILP if applicable. I think that was the only change there. The next change is down on line 27. Screening, scratch out or monitoring and put in or state assessment are released. So it was inserting state assessment and scratching off or at the end.
And these policies here, these have been gone through by the supervisors here in the office.
Yes.
So Ms. Cole and Dr. Blessing, they're the ones that have went through.
Good. Thank you, Melissa.
On page 3 of 5, there was a change on line 8. The director of schools / designee, inserting designee shall develop procedures to ensure appropriate record keeping of students who are retained. Next was line 12, in parentheses, receiving a performance level rating of met expectations or exceeded expectations. Striking out on track or mastered and putting in terms in which we fully understand here. And then I believe the last change to this was, yes, that is correct, is down on page 3, 5, line 27, putting in an F, section F, is in Frank. But I believe that y'all have that in y'all's now. Yeah, that's coming from the new TSBA, beginning with the 2023, 2024 school year.
Yes.
So I think that is in there. So those are the only changes to this, which was interjecting that law in F there, on page 3 of 5. And changing the languages that we described in the first parts. If there's no, this will be number 2, I already wrote a number 2. There we go. Motion and retention.
Robert, did you mention on line 25 on page 4 that they took out that directly to the Department of Education in the new policy?
Page 4, I didn't see nothing in red here. Let me,
On the appeals,
4, what line?
on the appeals section on the old one, it was line 25. Trying to see where it is on the new one.
23, maybe?
Well, it was inserting the days, and I think it's 10 business days. Is that what you're talking about? Where nothing was in this
No,
model
it's this-
policy?
Oh, it's down here on number 2, where they may appeal this decision. Ours said directly to the Department of Education, but the new one just says in accordance with state law. So you just have to take out the directly to the Department of Education.
Well, what we're doing is making these changes as noted to our current policy.
Right.
So do we want our current policy to change from the Department of Education in accordance with state law? That is in our current.
Right, so it just depends on
Theirs
which one
just,
you want.
theirs just says state law. Ours says the Department of Education in accordance with state law.
That was just a change. I noted.
I didn't see it, I didn't have it marked as a change. It's a difference.
Yeah.
It's a difference between, because we're not accepting the model policy, we're amending the
Amending your
current policy. So that would entail a motion being made to accept the changes to our current policy of 4.603 as described and noted that we all have. Yeah, I think I'm right.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Anderson has made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
Mr. Cordell. I was not here and I'm an aye. That is 6-0 passes. Okay, so that is done. All right, our next one will be Policy 1.106 and Policy 1.107 Code of Ethics. I gotta pull that up. Okay. I do not think,
Don't have 107, just 106.
that is board member 107 is board member conflicts of interest. We've combined two, huh? I don't think I do. Yes, I do. Well, I've got one from Ben Torres. I don't have one from that. Okay, so of these two, your Code of Ethics, Board of Education Code of Ethics, and board member conflict of interest, we received a email to reiterate. The board changed these two policies in September of 2023. That is 1.106, and in October of 2023, 1.107, after the email you are referencing was sent. Policy 1.106 deals with acceptance of gifts in voting and non-voting matters for board members. Policy 1.107 deals with conflicts of interest in voting matters. Those are the major differences between the two, but sometimes individuals think those issues are covered by one policy. We always want boards to know there is a difference between the two and the actions that result in a violation of each policy. Acceptance of gifts under the Code of Ethics can occur at any time and applies to everyone in the district, board and staff. Conflicts of interest policy is addressing board members and board member actions while voting on items during a board meeting. Don't think there's any issues with this. I think that was just a kind of a review. If anybody has any changes on these two policies they're recommending, because it's time, we do have to review these every year, and it's probably a good time that we do reiterate and make sure we all kind of recognize those and people in YouTube land are watching. And I've read through both of these countless times for different things. I'm perfectly fine with the way both of these policies currently read. If there's anything anyone has a question about or issue with, now is the time. Otherwise, we can just call these as reviewed and accept them as is to stay in the book and stay in place and move ahead.
Make a
I
motion,
make-
we accept them as is.
Okay?
I'll second that.
Ms. Jones and Mr. Cordell. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Nope. Ms. Parsley?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Yinch?
Aye.
Mr. Cordell?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
And the chair's aye. That's 6-0, stays as is, and been reiterated and been checked. All right, number 4, that is policy 6.701 and TSBA. You should have a copy of TSBA's model, which is called 2.601, which is fundraising activities.
Oh, Lord.
I gotta get back in line here. Okay. we do have fundraising policy.
Yes, he
Yeah.
said we didn't, but
At
we did.
first, TSBA thought we did not have a fundraising policy because I think they had received some email contact of some questions about our fundraising policies and the way we do it, as if we didn't have it. Well, we do have a fundraising policy, and it is 6.701. There is a model policy from TSBA that I think everyone may have. I think our policy, to my knowledge and to my effect, I don't have any changes there.
So the email, one of the emails that I had, Ben said that we didn't have a fundraising possibility, but we could possibly cancel the 6.701 and adopt the 2.601.
Well, if
So
you
I think
read,
it's about the-
if you read our 6.701, then turn around and look at his 2.601, there's pretty much not any, ours actually has a little bit more requirements. We have a little bit more control and requirements, I think, in ours than TSBA's model. I think this has been reviewed many times before.
do we
I
want-
think some just because they seen student solicitation considered it wasn't a fundraising policy,
Do
but
we want to take this policy that we have currently and make it into policy 2.601 with the title fundraising activities? And delete this one?
well, I mean, I'm reading
So
our
it- So
policy
it keeps
is,
in line, so
Yeah.
there's numbers in TSBA, and I think that's what happened.
well, what is our section 6? Is that student
Student.
services or,
Student.
Is there another section for student solicitations anywhere? Because that is important.
I
that
think
we-
that's what the problem was.
If
So-
student
so the
solicitations were read
recommendation
somewhere
of-
else, we could do that.
so the recommendation of TSBA is for us to split student solicitations and fundraising activities. Even though they may be the same policy,
He's saying to take and adopt this fundraising policy. I think
well,
it's the
ours is pretty much the same thing. I'm not for that. If anyone else wants to move for such, that is fine, but I think our fundraising policy has been, I've lived by it. And we've also kind of tuned it to our system a little bit here. And, take a minute, kind of look over that. And,
Robert, could we just,
Only thing we don't have it out, I'm sorry, go ahead.
could we just change the code? Take ours and say, we're not gonna change it to line up with the codes at TSBA, and change it to a 2.601, and not change the policy?
and 2.601 goes into fiscal, and section 2 of our, it goes into the fiscal aspects, yes. I think that'd be a good, I think that'd be an okay idea, is basically take our 6.701 and just rename it 2.601.
Yeah, that seems the simplest.
Okay, the only thing that I see that we don't have in our policy that is in the recommended policy is a section on record keeping, because we've got the
Record keeping.
lotteries, we've got the online
Yeah, that was-
fundraising, we got fundraising for non-educational purposes.
But I
But
think
don't
we
see
have,
record keeping.
well, but I think we have another policy, for our record just for the record keeping and auditing of school support organizations and boosted funds, I think.
This is, all we could do is add that, though. It
I
just
think-
says, the director of schools or designee shall ensure that the appropriate records are maintained for each fundraising activity and shall be responsible
Yeah, that's in
for
the,
collecting
Yep.
and maintaining. That's the only thing I see.
yeah,
that
that's
we
in
might
the,
need
I
to
do
add.
know that that's in our SSO policy, school support organization policy, but I don't have a problem with putting that in the
Right,
fundraising
'cause
as well.
I think it'd be good.
I think that'd be a good idea, actually.
Just add that section.
Taking the, so it would be renaming, the motion would be renaming our current policy 6.701 to policy 2.601, and also interjecting at the end of our policy, the record-keeping section of the TSBA model policy.
Hey, you know what? We've got that. It's just not labeled as, you know, in bold as record keeping. Cause see, look at number, on page 303, it says the director of schools shall
Yes, we
develop
do have it,
administrative
it's just not
procedures.
labeled record keeping. It is in there, in
But we
the
may-
paragraph.
We may want to adopt their language though, and that way we'll be okay.
I think it's,
Because it doesn't say anything about maintaining it, and it just says the director of schools.
auditing these
And this one says the
non-educational
director of
funds.
schools or designee. So, you know, to give you a, director of schools wouldn't be the only
The
one.
one having to do it, okay, yeah, I still like that, so we'll still interject.
Scratch three, that, yeah, that.
Okay, I know how to word this now. You ready? A motion, need a motion to, good Lord. I'll need a motion to take our current 6.701 policy, rename it 2.601, and scratch out our current lines 3 through 5 on page 3 at the end, and interject TSBA's model, page 3 of 3, lines 6 through 9, under the record-keeping section.
I
That is
so move.
about as
second.
plain as you can get it.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Miss Beth moved and Mr. Cordell seconded. Is there any further discussion? If none, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Yench,
Aye.
Mr. Cordell.
Aye.
And chair is aye, that is 6-0, that is done with those changes as noted. Catch those? Now. Number 5 is policy 3.202, emergency preparedness plan. I do not see any, wait a minute, I have a note here that Tanya is reviewing. She reviewed it, so we are okay, and do you see, there are, no, there's not. I don't see any changes whatsoever. Number 5. I would basically need a motion to accept policy 3.202 as is and let it stand.
I so move.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Yench?
Aye.
Mr. Cordell?
Aye.
And I'm out. That is 6-0. That is complete. All right, the next, number 6, is policy 3.218, service animals in district facilities. All right. The way I understand this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our policy is the same as the TSBA model policy, except we have an additional section on page 1, lines 19 through 23. And we also have, we read a little different in lines 19 through 21. And that was a minimum of a, no, I'm on something else. Never mind. The only change that we are seeing here between the model policy is interjecting lines 19 through 23 of our current policy. So if those lines can stay in there, then we can just push our 3.218 as reviewed and no changes.
You need a motion to accept it as is? I'll make that motion.
All right, motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'd make the second.
Ms. Yance is second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Yance,
Aye.
Mr. Cordell.
Aye.
And chair's aye. That's 6-0. We're good with number 6. Okay. Number 7 would be policy 3.5001. That is offer versus serve. I think the only thing recommended here in a change for this policy, current policy that we have, is on line 19, interjecting a minimum of, I think that's half a cup of fruit or vegetables.
And,
I didn't write that.
and on number 7, marking out kindergarten.
Yeah, or pre-K and
Pre-K
kindergarten. Yeah, pre-K and kindergarten. Line 7, marking out pre-K and kindergarten, and line 19, interjecting after offered, a half a cup of fruit or vegetables. Minimum of a half a cup fruit or vegetables.
That was reviewed by Ms. Thompson.
So I'll accept the motion if nobody has any issues with that.
I so moved.
All right. Is there a second?
I second
Ms. Lynch? Any discussion? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Yinch?
it. Aye.
Mr. Cordell?
Yeah.
Ms.
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Ms. Bewley. 6-0. That one is complete. Number 7. All right. Number 8 is policy 3.602, workers' compensation. I'm not aware of anything on this one, Ms. Melissa.
So on the workers' compensation, the only thing on here that's different is this was added by us at the bottom. In the event an employee is injured on the job while working for Coffee County School System and the employee receives workers' compensation benefits, the board will pay the difference between the normal or usual salary and the workers' compensation benefit payment. The board's salary payment shall not exceed 1/3 of the usual salary of the employee. The payment by the board shall be paid for the employee for the days they are working for workers' compensation benefits not to exceed 30 days. The board will also continue to pay the individual insurance premium for the employee during the 30 days maximum benefit. If the individual has family coverage, they must pay for the family coverage on a monthly basis, lump sum, or payroll deduction. So what this means is when they are getting workers' comp, they only are able to receive their insurance for 30 days. After that, they're supposed to come up and they pay for their own insurance. Also on here, the board pays 1/3 of the salary. So when they're on workers' comp pays them and gives them money, and then they have to send me something saying how much they're paying them. When I turn it around to bookkeeping, they figure it out and pay them the 1/3. So,
I wonder why we added that.
I don't know, it's very confusing, and it's very hard to keep up with everything.
Do all systems pay a third of the salary, under workman's comp?
Not necessarily, no, ma'am. Our system is a little bit different.
I don't, I know in the business world and on my side, I cannot issue payment from myself and my business to an employee that is on workman's comp. All of their payments and benefits have to come from workman's comp. I can't subsidize, I can't, and that's in the business world now. I don't know in the,
So if they can come back to work and they can go on light duty, then, so, say they hurt their back or something like that, if we can have them answer their phones or doing something like that, then they still receive a portion, they still receive their pay.
Mhm.
So that's the incentive to come back to work, so you're still getting your pay.
yeah.
But if they don't come back to work and the doctor takes them off, then after 30 days, we do not pay them, but they receive payments from workers' comp.
Right,
So-
and that's the way it is in the business world. When they are receiving benefit from workman's comp, paying their doctor bills, whatever, and paying them payments, lost wages for not being able to work at all, I can't issue anything to them. I can't give them, I'm not even supposed to give them a little helping hand.
And then too, also they have to take sick leave or, personal leave or something like that when they take off and go to the doctor from workers' comp. But workers' comp also on the back end, they pay them the mileage to go to the doctor and things like that.
Well, you're not supposed, I don't think as an employer with, and just on the employer side of things, if I have an employee on workman's comp, period, is taking them over till they come back to work. So if they were at work, but workman's comp make them go to a doctor's appointment for a checkup or a follow-up to make sure they're still in line, then workman's comp is still supposed to be compensating that individual. So we shouldn't have to pay them, or they shouldn't have to use a sick day.
Correct.
That's what.
But if they want extra supplement, they have to take those. But I get yelled at quite a bit.
Well, but what do you mean extra supplement?
So so even though workers' comp is paying them, if they wanna take a sick day, they can take a sick day and they can get extra, like, they can get that extra money. Or
Oh, in other words,
vacation
that-
day
Well, if they
and
got
extra
if they
money.
got a sick day that they took that they're gonna get paid for anyways, whether workman's comp was involved or not, that's on,
That would
them.
be on them, correct.
that would be on them anyways. They're just taking a sick day and getting some of their money for a day they don't have to be there that they're entitled to anyway.
Right.
So it's not really an extra benefit, that's on them.
But they don't always see it like that.
It looks like that.
I mean, am I missing something?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I want to make sure that I understand something because we have the model policy copy right here too. So if we took out those bottom three paragraphs for what we have now, sounds like that's going to make Melissa's life a lot easier. But the employee is still going to get compensation from workman's comp during the time that they're having to miss work. Does that equal the amount that they are normally paid?
So what I've been
Okay.
told, that it should equal it out because the money that they receive from them, they pay no taxes on. And so they said that they should be able to, because I asked, I was like, what
Right.
about paying for their insurance and things like that? They're saying they can't afford it, and they're like, they should have ample money out of that to pay. I mean, you do workers'
Like in,
comp, so-
right, we
I
got them
think
all the
that's right.
time. And they're, basically, their check stub, it's figured basically off their check stub in a 40-hour payment. And they get compensated for that. But while they're under workman's comp payments, I cannot pay them a dime more, mess with them with money, and I can't do no more than workman comp allows them to do. If they send them back to work on light duty, then they go back to work on light duty. If that
Understand.
causes them to not have a position for light duty, like an iron worker, there's no such thing as light duty.
Right.
Then we gotta, usually workman's comp will keep them on until they can get to that point, but of course, all they're gonna do is at the end of the year, they're gonna change my rate through the roof. Because they paid a bunch out because I didn't have light duty work. Unless they stood there and guarded the water jug, per se.
Yeah, right.
But while they're getting those benefits, we're not even really supposed to have contact with them.
Right. They're
With the
supposed to go
employee.
straight to their work.
So I don't know
their
where this
workers'
come
comp.
from of, well, we'll pay them more, but no more than 1/3 of their salary and make up this. They shouldn't be getting cut anything anyways. Unless I'm missing something on the education side.
Well, it looks to me like it hasn't changed. It was issued in first in
2006.
2006, and then in 2013, you know, that's the last time anything was changed.
I don't
It
know
looks to
where
me
that,
like.
and there's legal references down here, but also these legal references, model policy
But there's no legal references on.
are
what we
not
put in
lining
there.
up, are not lining up with our current versus the model,
And what
in
happens though
TCA.
is we have
but one.
employees that want us to give them days. They want us to pay them and give them days for being off.
I think you need to talk to your workman's comp provider,
I have talked to them.
and they said you can't pay them when they're on workman's comp. That's what I thought. I mean, that's the way it is in mine, and they're absolutely strict.
They argue
When
with us.
when they're paying them, you're out of it. Even if they get to go back to work, is on workman's comp.
And they're supposed to. So if we took these out, then they would bring their,
Release when they come back.
they'd bring
They're
their
supposed to be
release, and
paid.
then they would pay their own insurance. Or is the board going to elect to pay their insurance for 2 months or?
I believe there is a benefits break now. That would probably be something that we need to discuss is benefits and anything over that, because it's just wages that workman's comp affects. Is lost wages.
It seems to me
I
that.
guess it could come down to kind of like, what is instructional time or is not as instructional time
Lord.
is,
Oh, Lord.
is insurance, wages or not?
Well, it looks to me like this was written specifically for the Coffee County school system, because it says, you know, why would you put that in there? If it wasn't something specific that we
Oh,
did
yes,
back
we
in
specifically done
2013.
this, but I don't, that's what I'm saying is, I think this is
Maybe
against
at
the
that
law.
time it was admissible or something, I don't know.
I think this is against the law.
Right.
I think it was shot into our policy as if this is what we need to do and this is how we're gonna do it, but I don't think it's legal. That's just
If
me.
it's not on the TS, you know if that was legal, that would be put in the TSBA policy.
Right.
You would think so.
You would
Uh-huh.
think so. So I don't think it's legal.
It may have been at
But
that
I could be
time,
wrong,
who
and I'm gonna
knows, you
leave that
know?
open because I know my corporate world versus school world is different in places, but I don't know that workman's comp's gonna be one of them, but I could be wrong.
Robert, should we shelve this one and?
I'm
More
okay with that,
research on it?
I'm okay with pushing this one till,
Get more information.
I have gotten all the information that I can. Somebody else
I
is
would
gonna
shoot
have to-
this, I would shoot this straight to Ben
I've
Torres.
got emails upon emails.
Yeah, but what has Ben said?
I'll give you my emails.
What-
it's-
no, what did
it's
you
like
say? Is
nobody
this
wants to
illegal,
say
or-
Yes or no, you know?
I'll send this to you.
What about Cagle? I mean, if we're not allowed to, you know, if you're not allowed.
Yeah, if I'm not, why would the school system be allowed?
Because we're an employer. I mean, you
It
know, I
makes
don't
sense to me. I don't know, and we can push it off to another time, but it sounds like, based on our conversation, on our current policy, that fourth paragraph, at least that fourth paragraph would need to come out.
Yeah, that 9 through 12.
And based upon what the board wants to do, if they want to continue to provide insurance or not,
Yeah, the last paragraph, lines 15 through 17 would stay, but lines 9 through 14 would come out.
that's what I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Based on our conversation, that's what it sounds like to me.
Our current policy would require the removal of lines 9 through 14. If that be the case. We can push it, or we can remove these lines and see where it goes.
Well, since you might get feedback from staff, I would make sure that you knew legally where you were at.
That's fine with me. I mean, we can pull this from right now, we can shoot this to Ben to say, dude, is this even legal? So, okay, we're gonna pull number 8. Pulled. All right, number 9, free to take off with it. What is it?
Policy 4.2021, special education class size.
I'd say this would take Mr. Westmoreland, maybe? Yep.
So the only thing that we had to change on this is we changed the BEP to the TISA because it's no longer.
It's no longer BEP, it's TISA. Okay, and then down at the bottom, scratch out lines 13 and 14 and just put no state or federal laws.
And when I talked to TSBA, they said
No,
they were
that's
no
a no.
longer maintaining this policy.
They were no longer maintaining this? Is that true?
Yes.
So we could just have a vote to remove policy 4.2021 completely from our,
Based on the legal guidance, yes. The class sizes typically are based on, a lot of times districts make decisions on class sizes.
okay.
But if this is referencing special education in general, we are well below, we try to stay well below what any, a 1-to-5 ratio, a 1-to-10 ratio, as
But do
best
we
we
need
can.
a policy though in case we increase or get to that point?
The board can elect to have a policy that states, we're going to fall within Tennessee state guidelines for class sizes. But, and I think that's essentially what that policy says.
Yeah.
And so basically, we're agreeing with the State Department that we're going to follow those guidelines. We're not going to have a class with a 1-to-50 ratio.
Okay.
We're going to follow their guidelines as they change.
So I would ask for a motion to amend our current policy of 4.2021 by just striking out BEP in line 4 and inserting TISA. Oh, and mark out lines 13 and 14.
And those will be reviewed every year. So if there's
Yeah.
changes that come next year or more guidance, then we can adjust from there.
Can I get a motion of such?
I so moved.
All right, Ms. Yinch, second.
I second it.
Ms. Jones, any discussion? Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
and the chair's aye. That is 5-0, because we lost one. All right, number 9 is done.
Policy 4.203, advanced college placement.
14, 25, number 10. Okay. Advanced college placement,
It's pretty much the same.
I think it is just an approval unless somebody has a recommendation to change. I'll take a motion to accept policy 4.203 as reviewed and kick it to next year.
I make the motion to accept policy 4.203 as reviewed.
All right. Get a second.
I second.
Ms. Parsley. All right, Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
and I'm yeah, okay. 5-0, that one's done. 10 is done. Number 11, that is going to be policy 4.204, summer instructional programs. Summer instruction programs, I have a note here that we have a great policy currently, other than, I see, interject after line 13, add summer programs section with date June. What am I missing there?
So, on here, they asked to, interject the model policy summer programming and put the date of June 1st on here,
Okay,
after line 13. And
scratch out on line 15, maybe B, and put
Yes.
maybe.
yeah,
Okay. I think that's, needs to happen. And then on lines 20, start at missed, scratch out all the way through lines 21, and add from TSBA. I don't have that.
add from TSBA,
Yes,
students
I
who
do.
are required to attend summer program.
Add the summer program section, talking about courses offered, all of that. Does everyone see that? On the model policy?
Yeah.
On the back, are you referencing the back? Under third grade promotion and retention law and makeup? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Where it's that students shall attend 18 days out
Yes.
of 20 days. Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, but back on the front sheet, though, on lines 21,
Mhm.
you'd be interjecting that whole summer program section there that is squared off in red. With the June 1st, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the notes you made, Mr. Jimmy, on the back. I don't see any issues. Does anyone else see any issues? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the changes to our 4.204 as described.
I so move.
Ms. Yench,
I'll second.
Mr. Jimmy, is there any discussion? Mr. Jimmy,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Yench,
Aye.
and I'm a aye. That's 5-0. That is complete. All right,
I know why
number-
Congress passes laws late in the day.
Number 12,
Ready to
number,
say, "Okay, let's
number
go."
13, item number 13, policy 4.213, family life education. I have new. That is a new policy for us to, that's 4.213, is that correct?
Yes, 4.213.
This is a new policy for us to consider.
However, I think that over at the middle school, that Dr. Anderson has a program over there called Healthy Boundaries.
Yes.
And it's similar to this right here.
Yeah.
So,
It meets this.
It does meet this? Okay.
yes.
So if we did have this policy, you can still continue to do what you're doing.
Yes.
And others could.
And it
mirror.
is with an organization that comes in and teaches this. Our teachers do not teach this content. This has been a practice in place for many years. I've sat in on their presentations when I first went there. They do an outstanding job.
This just installs a policy 4.213 for us.
is there
To do
anywhere
that.
that we need to put healthy boundaries in here?
I don't think we should, because that'll pigeonhole us into using that organization every year, right?
And this,
So,
this may be amended in the future anyway, because
Yeah.
isn't there a bill saying that you gotta teach that you go to school, you get married, and then you have a child?
I thought that's what happened to me.
Well, I mean, that there is gonna, there is a debate.
I went to
down
school one day, woke up and got kids everywhere I'm taking to school, so.
there. Well, I think the state's again trying to interject and say we gotta teach the order.
Yeah. Sometimes,
That would be nice.
you know what,
Change the-
sometimes
but
teaching
think of
order
the
to
kids,
some
though,
is
that are in-
nice.
Think of the kids, though, that were in there that didn't come in that order. You
I'm-
know?
I'm-
Well, that helps the
Wait a
next
minute.
generation to know the proper order, I'd say.
So this is
You
just
got
gonna
me
be a
on
new
that one.
policy, I think.
I can only think of one way babies are made, Frida.
No, what, but in the order. I just hope I just hope they don't make a bill that you don't get divorced, because that would really be a problem.
They don't need any more help. So this is establishing a policy 4.213 titled Family Life Education.
I'd like to put an age in there. Nowhere in here does it define an age. So if this is being taught mainly in the middle school, then I'd like to define that as the age.
And I don't think it says it's age appropriate, and that would depend on the
Yeah.
person, I guess.
The only thing it
world.
says is within state law. I mean, there's not a date or an age in there.
I'm not sure if this content is covered at the high school. I don't know if, I'm not sure.
So it would come down to the,
Okay.
I don't think so.
it'd come down to law recommending that, and whatever the law had in it.
It's got quite a bit because I printed it off.
Okay, does the law reference an age? Because if
Mostly,
we're
I
noting
think
the
it
law in
talks
this
about-
policy, then we'd have to follow by the age that the law says. We wouldn't necessarily have to state it in our policy.
I think mostly it talks about what's acceptable for ages. I don't think it specifically gives age. But when your people teach it, do they go back to the laws and what's been defined? Because there's a lot that has been defined that is,
I do, so our seventh and our eighth graders receive this presentation every year. So this is not something that we do for our sixth grade. Again, that's been practice. That's been the practice since before I came on board there. It seemed appropriate to me, so that's why we
But it's
continue.
not a regular class, is it?
No,
Oh,
no,
it's
it's,
not
it's
a-
3 days of instruction from this organization.
Once a
that-
year, yeah.
Once a year. Yep.
And this here says, provide instruction on prevention of dating violence, that would be older children, because they wouldn't be dating in elementary school.
Right.
But, like you say, it's not defined, so
Says who?
they may say they're dating. It's not what I define as, maybe they need to define what dating means. Talking.
Exchanging Valentine's?
But dating violence, that's pretty, these are important topics, I'll say that.
Yes. I mean, I'm in agreement with the policy, but I do share concern over when we start talking about all this, but
and that's why I really would like to put an age, because I don't think any of this is appropriate for elementary. As long as we've got the
Definitely not.
principles we've got right now, I don't think it's gonna be a problem, but
and I think sixth grade, I think you've got a buffer there because they're just now getting really a lot more freedom to roam about. I'm not saying that they don't need to know, but I don't like putting the school system in a position of doing the teaching in sixth grade. Maybe parents should be and be pushed to, but I don't think the school system should take the liability of teaching them too. But now by seventh grade, they've done figured out the world and know everything.
yeah, by seventh grade, it's wise to put
In
a
life
little
anyways,
bit in
better
there.
start talking to them.
I do like that the parent or guardian can, choose not to have. to
Opt in or
participate.
opt out.
Right, and we do have a permission form that we send every year that parents have to mark they choose to or they choose not to.
So we could accept this policy with one additional revision to start in seventh grade, allow the use of this policy in seventh grade of our Coffee County schools, if that's what, yes, sir.
I think the board might want to think about asking that question, because I think the bill was written for K-12 education to have the guidance to develop a curriculum or to have a curriculum. I don't have a bill in front of me in this sense, but with it not being grade specific, it could potentially be written for elementary, but there's certain curriculums for elementary. So, just come to my mind, it might be something. We talked about it supervisors meetings, and the best I remember about the conversation was it's a bill for districts to have this, basically a requirement to do this, but there was never a mention of a grade thing that I can remember.
But could we still put it in ourselves?
Well, I would suggest as long as you don't violate the rule that's written.
our fifth graders have a puberty class, but they can opt out of it.
that would fall under.
That would fall under this policy.
Yeah.
So
That's
this
right.
policy
I
is
forgot about
allowing
that.
that. allowing- Okay, so
And that age,
there's the reason for
they're
not
in
having a
Yeah.
day.
Sixth graders too,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's
And
at the end of the year.
Yeah.
To find the curriculum that they want to use. And then all the parents in the policy, I think it's written for them to be able to opt out.
So we are to the point of just establishing the policy to permit exactly what they do in elementary and middle school. So it would be a motion to accept the, to enact the policy 4.213 in the Coffee County Schools. If I could get a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Anderson, I got a second.
Second.
Ms. Jones. Any discussion? Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Parsley.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Yinch.
Aye.
And Robert Gillies, 3-4-5, 5-0, that is done. 13. Okay, now, 14. Hey, we're down to 2. We're down to 2. Policy number 14 is policy 4.300, extracurricular activities. Oh, man, we've got somebody wrote a bunch of stuff. Oh, Lord.
I don't see any changes from our policy to theirs.
They're the same.
Okay. Why is interscholastic athletics in here? Okay. And there is no,
It's actually just adding things to what we already have, to 1 and 3.
yeah, 1 and 3. Somebody put changes in here. Basically took the extracurricular activities model from TSBA. And we have several differences, but the biggest being on number 1, the board shall initially approve extracurricular activities at the district level to ensure proper support and supervision. But then that's just an example. The board would approve
Right.
the creation of a
Right.
new volleyball program or the ability for students to create a 4-H club within the district.
I think the fact
So-
that they put them in, they highlighted them, just means that this is just, like you say, examples. It's not
Examples.
really
I don't think
policy.
that's necessarily to be labeled in policy that,
Right.
Correct.
yeah, okay.
The only thing I see is they separated number 3 and made it 2 separate ones.
I kinda don't like it, and I think that's why I've just been given this. Interscholastic athletics, shall be administered as part of the regular school program and shall be the principal's responsibility. But in extracurricular activities, they're kind of grouping that with clubs and other things of board approval. So I think I did have a heavier discussion. I think I picked that out, I believe. I believe I picked that out because we do have another policy in our system about interscholastic athletics. And the extracurricular, there are some spots in the extracurricular activities that circumvent some things in the athletics, and the athletics circumvent some things in the extracurricular activities. They're wiping each other out, and y'all may not have that on the extracurricular activities. I don't have no changes. I don't see any changes that I have anywhere on the extracurricular activities, other than we do have, and maybe we just put interscholastic athletics on our next chore, and we'll provide a copy of this one, this extracurricular, because the extracurricular could probably, in my opinion, stay the way it is, because I don't see no changes. So we can make a motion on it to just keep going with it, but I would like to make sure, 4.301, make sure it goes on the next policy meeting. So number 14, I would need a motion to just move on as reviewed unless anyone has any changes or recommendations. And that's 4.300.
I make a motion to keep policy 4.300 as is.
All right, motion's been made.
I'll
Second.
second. I'll second it.
All right, Ms. Parsley, any discussion? Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Parsley,
Aye.
Ms. Yinch,
Aye.
Ms. Jones, and it's 5-3, or 5-0. We're gonna finish this, y'all.
Just got one more, haven't we?
Yep, one more. That's item number 17. That is policy 4.501, school volunteers. This ought to be easy. But watch, there's 19 emails. Is there? Okay, good. Student, no, I'm in the, wait a minute. Y'all were able to get ahead of me. If anybody sees anything, go ahead and speak.
Well, the last line on the new policy, the director of schools shall develop procedures to require the appropriate background checks for volunteers. And that's not in our policy. I think they're requiring background checks for any of the parents that do any volunteering now. I think that's taking place already, isn't it?
Well, at the middle school, I can tell you the only time we have volunteers is at our day that we call Raider Fest. So it's kind of like a carnival, if you will, during the day that happens at the end of the first quarter. It's the only time that we have any parents coming in and volunteering. We have our Raptor system that we have there that does a check for sex offender registry, that kind of thing. So everyone runs through that, but that's the only check that we have taking place for our parents that are coming in and volunteering on that day.
What do you have,
We
Leah?
have the Raptor system as well, and I know Hickerson does, but I think we're the only two elementary schools that have it. So not all elementary schools have the Raptor to do that.
I know I talked to Dr. Clark about volunteers one day, and he said that one of the reasons they didn't have them was because they had to have the background checks, and that got expensive. So,
Well, and I just want to say that I know, I understand wholeheartedly about getting volunteers. However, I don't know what I would do if I asked for a volunteer to come help and I had them around kids and they weren't supposed to be around kids.
right.
I don't know what I'd do to myself. You know what I mean? So you've got an unimaginable fear here with an unimaginable wish that all the volunteers in the world could help. So we got to find the line there. We got 5 minutes. We're going to finish this
Do we have
today.
anybody that's considered a volunteer that's not getting any compensation, like a coach or something? Are there any coaches?
No, if they're a
that-
volunteer coach, they're free.
Right.
Well, then wouldn't they fit under this?
They are
They would fit,
required.
but
They are
to
required.
have background.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of
They
the
do get
hiring
background
process.
checks. What we're
So
talking about,
This goes, so school volunteers would be any coach that is, doing that without compensation.
well, it includes them, but we're talking about, this policy is everybody that comes,
Right,
even
but I
somebody
don't
comes and
wanna-
helps during the day, but coaches
Right.
are,
They're
yeah.
included in this.
Yep.
this
But
part,
but
ETA.
already, they have to have background checks
Right.
anyways. We're not doing that of people that come in and help on Raider Fest
Correct.
and things of that nature. But we are coaches that are around them more often.
Correct.
We'll have parents that come in and help
So-
with, like book fair, but they're right there with
Yeah.
teachers and. we
Under
know
the
them.
supervision of
We know them.
staff members.
Ours is
Okay,
parents
do
that's
you-
been in the system for a while.
Well, I
It
like-
doesn't involve the director in any of this.
I like the model policy on that because it says on here that the volunteers must be approved by the principal and shall serve under the supervision and direction of the professional personnel in the school. I mean, I like that part.
Well,
But
but
if
the whole
coaches
thing
are
we're talking
included-
about, huh?
If coaches are included, so that's giving a principal the right to have a parent come in as a coach? As long as
Yeah, they
go-
do that
As long
now.
as they get a background check?
They do that now, and as long as they pass their background check, yes, they're allowed to help coach for free. But you're not gonna get many.
Correct.
That'll
I
come
know
in and
that used to
coach.
be unlawful, but I guess they've changed it.
What, coaches
Well, I know
coaching
that.
for free, volunteers?
They, no, I know whenever I was in the school system, you were not allowed to have a parent as a coach unless they were, an employee of the
You'll
school
never
system.
have a head coach. It'll never be a named position
But,
or
I
a
mean,
paying
but it
position.
was restricted then, but it's changed.
Well, you're not gonna have, you won't have a volunteer head coach
Oh, no.
of
No.
football, because there is a position that
No.
has to be filled within our system. But a volunteer position can just be created as somebody that just volunteers to help make sure the kids get fed before games.
Right.
But if they're gonna do that and be with the team on the daily, but they have to go through the background check to be that volunteer.
Right.
That's current. Yeah.
Well, the first line in our policy is the board endorses a volunteer program in the schools and authorizes principals to develop a volunteer program for each school. That's not in this
No. See,
policy.
the way we're treating coaches, volunteer coaches, is the way the model policy is.
Okay.
Down to your last sentence where the director or someone, they'll do a background check.
So do we want to adopt the
Well,
model
if
policy?
you adopt that, then we're gonna make volunteers for Raider Day have to have a background before they can help.
Okay.
Or parents for the book fair is gonna have to have a background check before they can help.
Our moms that come in and,
Now, you have, Raptor,
Yeah, we do too.
and they do too at the middle school. It's where they give them their driver's license as soon as they get there, and it does a quick scan and lets them know. So that's considered to me a background check.
Yeah, it does check them on that
It
second
says,
opinion.
well, it says appropriate background check, so that word
That could be
appropriate.
considered as appropriate.
Right.
Because they're doing a quick scan to see if they show up on a registry or something of that nature.
You guys have to pay for that?
Yes, it's an annual fee that we pay.
Okay. Do all the
Probably should be at
schools
every
have
one of our
that?
schools.
no, ma'am.
No,
I
ma'am.
wonder if we need to, the board needs to,
Mr. Yes, sir.
If you recall from our safety meeting,
Yes.
that system was something, well, I don't want to go into it too much, but we were talking about that for the whole school. So it might
Yeah.
become to,
Yeah,
Might
so
be
we could go
possibility.
with the model policy, and that would streamline everything.
yeah. That word appropriate leaves, what is appropriate for the
I-
position you're
I
gonna be in. So,
So we can, keep what we have, or we can go with the model. That is our two choices, or whatever, make a choice. Let me know. It's been 3 hours, but man, we pulled a normal.
This would not be requiring like our moms who come in and help with book fairs to like do a background check, would it, if we adopted that? But I know I agree we need procedures, but would it be so in-depth that they would have to go get a background check with
I
the
th-
fingerprints and all
I
that?
think that's what we're talking about, is that word appropriate.
Okay.
Right.
And the systems that
what
we
we
have at
have.
our school,
They're gonna take care of that for
Definitely
you anyways.
appropriate.
Now, not all schools have that,
correct.
but they need to do, one thing that even and a principal's gonna do this, is take into account due diligence.
Yes.
They're gonna make sure. I mean, if
Yes.
they know them, they know them, they don't, they don't.
Right, exactly.
And I like the TSBA one because it puts some responsibility on the director of schools.
Yes.
Will develop procedures to require it, so
Right.
it would, that way it's not just the principal that took the
Okay.
blunt, you might say.
All I need is a motion.
so which one are we motioning for? What was the
Whoever
say?
wants to make a motion
TSBA.
for the new or the old. Ms. Jones, you wanna make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the TSBA policy for school volunteers. That way we're covered.
Ms. Jones has made a motion to, accept TSBA's model 4.501. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ms. Yinch. Any discussion? Mr. Jimmy?
Aye.
Ms. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Yinch?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
And chair is aye.
And you know,
5-0.
and that is what Mr. Daniels said, that may be something we need to look at the program for
You know-
every school.
Yes, that may be something the
folks,
school board needs
That
to.
concludes our 17 agenda items. I want to thank y'all because it took 2 meetings to get these completed, but we just got them done, and we won't do this again, I promise.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.